message right now because the bulletin says 2 o'clock. Pastor thought we should start at 1:30, but the bulletin says 2, and so some people are operating under the bulletin. And so, but we will not wait till 2 to start, but you know what? I'll answer a couple of questions or something maybe. We'll do a little quick chat before we start. I'll start before 2. But does anybody have any questions or thoughts about the whole subject? Origins, or maybe I need to talk a little bit and then you'll get, and then you've always wondered about, and so you'll get a question from that. Yes?
Did you find these here?
These are all been purchased because as a pastor, they pay us a lot of money. And so at the end of every month, we think about what are we going to do with this extra cash? So, so anyway, you know what? I used to pastor at Upper Columbia Conference, a couple of churches, the Spokane Valley Church, and the Moscow Pullman District, which is a university district, which is good for my work. So anyway, the ministerial director was Gerald Hager, and Gerald Hager was in charge of us guys, and Upper Columbia has a $750 annual stipend they give to pastors for self-improvement. So you can go to a class or take some seminar or something somewhere, right? So I approached him early on. I say, Gerald, you know what I do on the side. You know I do creation stuff. Can I buy fossils with the money? And he goes, oh, brother, okay, Stan, sure, I'll let you do it. So over the years, you can accumulate a little bit of stuff. But I even have a Geiger counter. Remember what Geiger counters were back when the Russians were a concern? I tell people I'm the only pastor I know that could buy a Geiger counter and then write it off on their income tax. Yeah, do you remember the Russians? We were worried about the Russians. I grew up in L.A. Sorry. They're still coming. Yeah, but the Ukrainians will stop them before they get here. Anyway, we used to have air raid drills in school. And so when the siren would go off, you're supposed to get under the desk because the Russian atomic bomb wouldn't hurt you if you get under there, you know. Did you really in Richland even? Oh, well, yeah, Hanford, right? Okay, sure, no. Yeah, well, anyway. So, yeah, I have a Geiger counter. I've got a couple of ounces of uranium. I even have a little bit of regulations because it was in an antique jar. It like dates before the World War II. So it's not depleted. It's got U-235 in it, which is what they make bombs out of. So anyway, I'm just so happy to have that. It is so cool. Anyway, and it's really, as we say in the business, it's really hot. You put a Geiger counter on it and it really goes. Yes. You know, I didn't hold it on there long enough to know, but maybe. Oh, no, it's very powerful. You know, I've got radium salts, too. You know what radium salts are? Radium salts are the kind of thing that they used to put on wristwatches and clocks that keep them glowing at night. So you remember radium girls? Do you remember that story? The girls that got cancer by licking the brushes that were dipped in radium salts, and they would redo these watches. And of course, they didn't know that radioactivity was any big thing. I've got a set of Firestone spark plugs that had a little polonium in them. And so it says on the box, I've got the box plus one of them in their little holder, and it says, they're radioactive. This is before we knew anything about radioactivity, and it's like they thought that the polonium in the spark plug would actually create a hotter burn, so therefore more power, right? Yeah, we didn't know. So it's all kind of fun. where radioactivity is interesting is in dating rocks. So really, the decay of rocks is where that is interesting. I've got time to tell you this little story. Yeah, because it doesn't fit in the talks, but boy, it's a cool story. See what this is? It's a measuring cup with some lava in it. And I got to do something that every red-blooded American male wants to do once in life. I got to play in lava. Am I right? Yeah. So went to Hawaii, 25th anniversary. So ladies, points for that. We went for our anniversary. I got points for that. Anyway, we went to the Big Island, where at the time there was an eruption. And there had been one for like 50 years. But anyway, there was an eruption. We drove. I wanted to see a volcano up close. I wanted to see the lava. And then I even bought this little measuring cup to think that maybe I can just kind of, get a little bit in there. Wouldn't that be cool? That'd be so cool. Anyway, so we drove up to the edge of the highway to where the old lava flow had covered it, and you couldn't go any further. Parked the car, walked over to a ranger kiosk. Just a little thing for a ranger, and there was a woman ranger in there. National parks. This is Volcanoes National Park. So I walk over, and I asked her, is it okay if I walk over to where the lava is coming out? What did I expect? Dumb question, right? Guess what? This is what she said. Sure, just be careful. It's right up there where you see that heat image. It's right up there. So I think Hawaiians are less bothered by lava than us, mainlanders. Anyway. It's the goddess. Yes, yeah.
And the goddess wouldn't hurt us.
Goddess wouldn't hurt us. Okay, well, the goddess was going to hurt me because I stole some lava, and you're not supposed to do that. The goddess doesn't like that. So anyway, there's a strong tradition about that. So far, I'm okay. But anyway, walked up all the way to where this was. Overflows, old flows. Walk. Picked up a walking stick as I was going. And finally got up to where, sure enough, here it is oozing out of the side of this hill. Hey, have you heard that lava is hot? It's very hot. I mean, it is Daniel's three friends in the fiery furnace hot. I could not get any closer than from me to that girl right there. That's as close as I could get. And so I'm thinking, all right, smart guy, how are you going to get some lava in here when you can't get any closer to that? Another brilliant plan. No. So I thought, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Okay, well, I got this long stick. Okay, I'm going to put this on a rock, right? I'm going to put it on a rock, and I'm going to stick the stick in the lava and see if some of it will stick to the stick. So anyway, I poke it in there, catches on fire and drops. Try it again, catches on fire and drops. And then third time, catches on fire. Oh, no, there's some still on there. There's some. And I put it in the holder like that. Then I had my water bottle and I poured it on there. And there's my illegally collected piece of lava from a national park. How cool is that? Now, you might think why, besides being generally stupid, why I would do something like that. What I wanted to do is someday I want to break off a piece of this and send it into a lab and ask them how old they think it is. Because lava is the number one way of dating rocks. And so they wanted to see, and I want to find out if they think it's 1 million years old or something, because I was there the day it was born. And the moment it becomes a solid rock is the moment that the clock starts ticking as far as the age of this is concerned. So someday I'm going to do it. My problem is labs are getting smarter all the time. Where did you get it? Do you have an idea of yourself how old it is? They ask questions. They don't want to be embarrassed, and I don't blame them for that. They don't want to be embarrassed. So, what's that? I suppose. You know, they've dated lava flows that come down the side of mountains in Hawaii, and they get different dates further down the flow, which shouldn't happen. So anyway, plus they get dates that are much older, than flows that they actually witnessed to know how old the rock is. Sometimes they'll get 1 million years on something that's about 20 years old. So the point is this: when they do rock dating using that method, the science looks solid on paper. It's just when you apply it that it doesn't seem to work.
When you were there, Christmas time or a little after Christmas time?
No, I was there in August.
Really?
Not this August, but a few years ago. This is the 25th anniversary for me and my wife. So that would be,
I was there when it first
I take my shoes off and count. So about 19 years ago. So anyway. Any questions? Yeah. Oh, there we go. Well, and me too, for that matter. But go ahead.
I missed the first several minutes probably of this talk, so I'm not sure if you've talked about the difference between lava or igneous rocks and sedimentary rocks, and what rocks are actually dated using radiometric dating methods.
I did not talk about any of that. However, I will.
Okay.
So I appreciate that. Now, we cannot date sedimentary rock. And sedimentary rock is far and away the most common rock. We can only date things that were liquid at one time and then became solid. So that's an igneous rock. And lava is far and away the most common igneous rock. So they do that. Potassium argon dating. I've got potassium and I got argon and I got I'm an element collector. I love elements. I have an advanced element collection. I've got technetium. You know what that is? It's a man-made element. And got it from a source in Europe, that it was a product of a nuclear reactor in Europe. As far as I know, could be illegal to own.
So somebody's looking for you.
Yeah, I know. I have total fun. Oh, guess what? I have had people come to my house to ask me some questions from a federal agency that was concerned about some things that were sold on eBay, but in particular, they want to know about a guy that was a customer of mine. So I actually bought and sold uranium. How about that? When was the last time you've heard that? So anyway, that's a few years ago. But it's legal. It's legal. Just thought I'd say that. I have been to Iceland, yes. When we were at Andrews and we wanted to fly to Europe for our honeymoon, we went to Ireland for our honeymoon. How about that? That's cool. And we camped around Ireland. But the cheapest flight out of Chicago to Europe was Iceland Air. So they always stop in Iceland. And we saw geysers and waterfalls and stuff. I got a couple of rocks. Yeah, they do. I'm sorry. This is not about me. What else do you got questions about? Anything? Yes.
I've heard with dating, like in lava flows,
Yes.
that it's different if it goes underwater. Is there anything to that?
Not particularly underwater. And incidentally, the science said it shouldn't matter. The science says it shouldn't matter if it got shot into the sun and experienced super hot temperatures. The science, no. But what possibly matters, okay, radiometric dating only works if 3 things are in place. Number 1, you know what you're starting with when the clock starts ticking. In other words, there's no what we would call daughter material around mother material, the stuff that it decays into is daughter. So you have to know how much mother you got. Number 2, it's got to be a sealed system with nothing coming in and nothing going out during the dating period. And then number 3, it's got to maintain the exact same speed of decay. All three of these are under serious looking at. But if those all 3 are in place, then it should be good science. Yes? Did I see a hand?
Thank you. Is it true that they had to change the dating on petrified forest things after Mount St. Helens blew in those trees, floated in the lake, then turned to rock?
Okay, you're close.
Close?
Again, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about Mount St. Helens here in a little bit and what we learned from it. The tree thing, I guess we're not hitting the tree thing. The tree thing, that's another talk. Have you been anybody here ever been to the Petrified Forest in Yellowstone? Specimen Creek. So it's a serious hike, but you get up into the place where there's several logs that are petrified trees sticking out of the ground. I mean, big things, you know, huge things, and they're solid rock. So it was always portrayed with signs down below. This is an example of petrification in place of this forest millions of years ago. And then it got a little shorter, and finally Mount St. Helens happened, and we had all these trees knocked down by the eruption and landing into the Spirit Lake. Now, Spirit Lake, they have all these logs in it, and some of the logs waterlogged over a period, and actually they basically they did this, if you can imagine it, kind of like in the water, and then boom, down to the bottom. And they sunk and they stuck into the soft sediments at the bottom. Now, more sediments keep coming in year after year into this lake and fill it up, and the imagination would be, looks like eventually these trees are going to be preserved in an upright position, looking for the world like that's where they were growing. So, one of the scientists who went over there was a Seventh-day Adventist, and he did a study with another guy of these logs in that lake, in Spirit Lake, and then they asked for permission to go to Yellowstone. Can we dig up underneath the petrified forest? Let us dig under those trees. And what would they be looking for? They're looking for roots. Did they really get petrified in place? Guess what? No roots. So this was all part of a volcanic eruption earlier that washed all of these trees into some kind of body of water, and over time they started to get stuck in what essence would end up being what looked like the side of a hill. But actually, they were in a lake, and they got stuck that way. And so they've redone the explanation for the petrified forest, because I was in a bookshop there, and I'm listening, and I heard a DVD being played, and it would say, scientists now know, thanks to Mount St. Helens, that the petrified forest was actually preserved actually made in a relatively short period of time during volcanic action and so forth. So I thought, yes. And let's see, do they credit creation scientists? No. Yeah, you were the first one. No, they didn't. So it's too bad, because creation scientists ask different questions than others ask. So sometimes God helps us out on that. Anything else? Yes? Pardon me? Ringwoodite? Yeah, ringwoodite. Water inside of rock and diamonds and a mine in South Africa. Diamonds? You're sure diamonds? Pretty sure. I guess I don't know. Don't know anything about it.
They theorized in 2009 that there was water inside of rock.
Okay.
And in 2017, in digging in a very deep mine in South Africa, they determined there was this substance called ringwoodite. Ringwoodite in testing is water that has in almost a rock form, and they've calculated both for volcanic eruptions and for the amount of water on the earth that there is actually enough water to cover the entire earth with 100 feet of water in a flood, and it would require a breaking of the fountains of the deep.
Okay, thank you. Boy, I mean, that's pretty close to my first slide on this, so, you're really close. Okay, so this is a stalactite, okay, a slice of a stalactite coming from a cave, all right? If you can look at the inside of it, and you can see how it was formed. About 90% of it was done very rapidly. You can see that. There's no rings. It's just like that. And then a couple of extra rings afterwards. This is inside of a pipe, a section of a pipe from a hot water mineral fountain kind of thing in the Czech Republic. So because the mineral water has all these minerals, which is the same as a stalactite. It's calcium carbonate, same stuff. And you can see that it doesn't take long to make a deposit on the inside of this pipe that had to be replaced. So the stuff that happens with water, we got water everywhere. There was some kind of an unofficial race, international race of who could dig the furthest down into the crust of the earth, and I think the Russians won. So they went, I think it was in Siberia, and they dug down, I forget how many miles. And you know what they found down there? Water. They did not expect to find water down there. The point is, water is so more ubiquitous, way more common than we originally thought. So, okay, let's get started with the flood, since we're talking about water. Are you going to put that up there, or can you? You can? Oh, there it is. Boy, it's terrible. That's not very bright. Dim the lights. Who cares about what I look like? Oh, let's go for it. Yeah, there we go. Okay, we still got, oh, that's getting better. Better. The floods. Let's get rid of the floods. Hey, did you see that was pretty funny, huh? Did you get that? That's pretty good. Get rid of the flood so we can see the flood. Okay. Wow. Okay, here we go. Oh, well, you know what we need to do? We need to pray. Let's ask God to be with us, of course. Let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, as we're taking a look at this subject of the flood, we realize it's an opportunity to learn things that we can share with others about the historical nature of your word. Help us to see it, help us to learn, and help us to be able to share, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, I've got a little bit of an issue with the grandmas that are present here. So grandmas, I'm calling you out. Here it is. How many of you are guilty, and I'm using the word, guilty, of giving your grandkids some kind of toy, some kind of puzzle, some kind of coloring book, something that depicts the flood like that? I don't blame you for not raising your hand. Because I don't like this image for a couple of reasons. Number one, the flood was possibly the most horrific event in the history of the universe, save maybe Calvary. The most horrific event, and actually I don't like the image of this because it looks like a fairy tale to me, like it's not historical. So if you're trying to tell your grandkids that God will always provide something to, get you through, yeah, this is like flashing, it's like strobe. This is taking me back to the 60s. Oh, okay, there you go, thank you. Okay, so what's really interesting is about what caused the flood. And please look carefully at this. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. So God looked upon the earth, and indeed it was corrupt. For all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with what? Violence. The world was filled with violence. Please notice the language, all flesh, all flesh. This is incorporating the animal kingdom. So God is going to target the animal kingdom as well as the human kingdom because they share the same problem. They're violent. They're out of control. And so God is going to take care of this. Let's take a look. Now, this is Mount Ararat, and you can see that Mount Ararat's got a lot of places you could land something in, right? You could settle something in around there. But you know what? And I know wherever I go to, especially in Adventist church, there's always going to be people that have heard about Ark discovery stories, right? You've heard about different times that people think they found the Ark and all that. There's a couple of conservative, one in particular, conservative Christian creation ministries that have no problem with the idea of the flood, of course, and all that, no issues, but have researched very carefully every flood story that there is of recent times. You know, a guy that took his kid during the World War I approximately in Armenians and put his son up on on a staircase? Do you walk down something like on the top of the ark or something? You know, there's all these stories. And they have carefully researched every one of them. And guess what they have come to the conclusion of? The ark is not there. I mean, we've got satellites that can take pictures of what you're reading, you know, and the headlines. And no matter what you think about global climate change, there's no question that we're losing more snow covering. And so whatever's up there is not the ark, not the ark. So I don't have a problem with this because I've got a theory that's so good, you can't disprove it. This is my theory. I think that Noah and his family got off the ark. They looked around. They couldn't see any Lowe's, any Home Depots. There were no Walmarts. There wasn't even any forests. And so I think they looked around. What are we going to build with? What are we going to use for resources? And I think they looked at say, what was that? Anyway. So I think they looked at the ark. I think they took it apart because ancient people did that. They reused stuff. So anyway, I think that's what happened. But if you really want to see it, you need to go to Kentucky. That's right. How many have gone to see the Ark experience in Kentucky? Only a handful, just a couple. If you have a bucket list, put this on your bucket list. I think every Christian, certainly every Adventist, ought to go once to Kentucky. I know it's not around the corner, but this is opening day for the Ark experience. This is a full-scale reproduction of the ark, although it's in the shape of a ship, which I actually disagree on. Incidentally, what's an ark? Because there's an ark of the covenant, and Noah had an ark. So we're talking King James English here. What's an ark? What? A box. It's a box. It's exactly right. It's a box. God said, build me a container. We're going to put my people and the animals in it. That's it. Because there's different words in Hebrew for ship or boat. So that's why I'm a little hesitant when they build it in the shape of a boat. But he said an ark, build me a box. So, and you know what? I like the phrase Ark of the Covenant. It sounds better to me than 10 Commandments box. Okay, anyway. So, and this ark has 3 decks in it. Bottom one has the animals. Second deck has storage plus where Noah and his family were. And then the top of this deck, actually the third deck, actually has science exhibits, which I was really going to see what the evidence for the flood was and all that. Then they had Bible collection and something to gift shop. And then, but toward the back, on the top, they had a full gospel presentation from the fall of Adam and Eve, through the flood, through Calvary, all the way to the second coming. It was all in there, and so I thought that was really cool. I like what these people do, even though I don't agree with everything they believe. They promote creationism in ways I wish we could. Problem is that boat cost $100 million to build. So you guys are probably happy, you know, how much you've got pretty well done on your community thing. Imagine trying to raise $100 million for a building project. Anyway, pretty cool. If any of you men like to work with wood, you would love this thing because they really tried to build it using old techniques and so on. Anyway, if I'm a Bible skeptic, I know the Babylonians had a flood story, the Gilgamesh epic, and written down for centuries before Moses would ever have written it down. So if I'm a Bible skeptic, I'm saying, yeah, the Bible story is just a Babylonian tale with a couple of twists that make it sound a little more Hebrew, that's all. But here's the problem with that thinking. Flood stories come from all around the world, and I mean more than just the biblical story. Let's take a look. We got Babylonians, we got Egyptians, Persians, Assyrians. They all have flood stories. Let's go to Europe. The Greeks actually had the date pretty close to the biblical date. Celts, Romans, let's keep going. Let's go to Africa. Now, these are all tribal contacts before missionaries got there, okay? So these are not post-missionary. Look at even the Pygmies, right? Let's keep going. Let's go to Asia. All of these different ancient cultures have memories of the flood. Let's go now to the South Pacific. The Australians would be the Aborigines. I mean, even Hawaiians have a flood story. Let's go to the Americas now. Lots of what we would think of as modern tribes, and even ancient tribes like Mayans and Incas and so forth. So I was at Smithsonian Institution's Native American Museum. Did you know they got one in Washington, D.C. for Native American history? So went there and went up to the top on the inside. It's kind of like a teepee going up to the top. The oldest displays up there at the top. And there was a Native American woman who had a group with her. She was a guide. And so she kind of was walking around with them and talking about the displays. And I thought I'd listen to what she was saying. And she said, you know, my people, talking about her tribe, my people have a flood story. You people do too, right? And then she said this, maybe there's something to it. And I thought, Smithsonian Institution. Only a Native American could get away with saying it there. But anyway, it was pretty cool. All right, let's keep going. So the differences in those flood stories are very minor except for one thing. The biblical story has God giving people a way to safety to ride through it and providing the ark. The others, it's usually the ingenuity or the smartness of a survivor or two that make it through. But God provides the big difference. Okay, now, somebody mentioned water and how much water we had on the planet. And guess what? If we were to smooth this planet into a marble, round, with no mountains and no valleys, we have 5,000 feet of water that would cover planet Earth. We are not short of water. We have plenty of water. So the idea of a worldwide flood may not be that far-fetched. So when it says in the Bible that on that day the fountains burst forth, that could also mean volcanoes because the word fountain is not necessarily tied to water. It basically is a word that means something that shoots up, okay? So this was a standard understanding of the earth of scientists for years. When they looked at mountains, when they looked at the crust of the earth, what they saw was evidence of the flood. Last couple of actions of the flood, you know, before the flood went away. That was a standard understanding until something happened. And that is in Europe especially, and in universities, often starts there. We have the rise of secular humanism and the decline of Christianity. For instance, Darwin's teachers, I think I told you this before, only one of the teachers in religion at Cambridge believed that the Bible, Genesis, was accurate. All the others didn't believe that. So evolution was already taking hold. I hate to say this, but this is really true. Europe is now post-Christian. Post-Christian. I'll leave it to you to decide. It's not for discussion. Leave it for you to decide how America's doing. But anyway, okay. So people like this came along. James Hutton, who's the father of modern geology, and he proposed something called uniformitarianism, which kind of sounds like a church. I'm a member of the Uniformitarian Church. Uniformitarianism is simply this. The Earth's surface has been altered by processes that are currently observable only, and not a catastrophe, not a flood. So the idea is whatever's going on now has always been only going on, right? No big events. Let me give you an example. And if you've ever been to the Grand Canyon, how many Grand Canyon types? Okay. Have you ever done one of these? If you didn't have a pacemaker before. No, anyway, that's, yeah. So take a look at this. Colorado River cutting through the canyon today. This is how a uniformitarianist would look at this, or scientists would look at this. How much mud comes out in 1 year in the Colorado River? Calculate that. How much is missing in the canyon? Do the math. That's how old the canyon is. End of story. Let's go to another subject. Seriously, it's about that slam dunk. So anyway, what's really interesting is they've looked for the material from the Colorado River in the Gulf of California, which is where the Colorado River currently deposits between Baja and the mainland of Mexico. Right there is where the Colorado, and guess what? They can't find all of this material. It's not there. But anyway, okay. So that's become the standard understanding, uniformitarianism, until a guy by the name of J. Harlan Bretz comes along, UW. I used to pastor in Pullman, and Pullman is Washington State. You know, go Cougs. And I did this lecture across the street. So I said, sorry, this was not a Coug, this was a Husky. You know, boo, UW. This guy came along, he was a geologist, and he went up to a place called Dry Falls. Anybody here ever been to Dry Falls? Okay, Dry Falls kind of in the Grand Coulee area. He went up to there, right there, and he looked around, and that's a picture of it right here, with this water. And he looked at the cliffs, and he said, boy, these cliffs sure look like Niagara Falls with the water turned off. They look like they were carved by water. And yet the water is not carving anything today. There's a little water down here. But something happened in the past. And so he started talking to his friends, other geologists. And he said, I think there was some kind of a flood event took place there. Understand that the word flood is the hardest thing for a scientist to pronounce. Because they were so entrenched in being anti-creationists that they don't want to hear anything about a flood. Don't talk to us about a flood. No flood. Anyway, so he talked about a flood, and he said, no. And then they said, well, where did the water come from? And he said, okay. So he went upstream to look for water. And guess what? He went up to Missoula, Montana. Now, have you been to Missoula? If you've seen the mountains around Missoula, you can see clear as anything. There's a shoreline, there's a shoreline, there's a shoreline. You can tell there used to be some more water there. So he came up with the idea of this. He said at some time in the past, there was an ice dam that happened right about there on the Clark Fork River and backed water up around what's today Missoula, and had so much water back here that this was the size of a lake like Lake Superior or Lake Ontario, one of the Great Lakes. And then at some point in the past, and incidentally, this is all from the Ice Age, which we'll talk about in a minute. At some time in the past, that ice dam broke and emptied that lake out in the matter of 1 to 2 days. And the amount of water came so fast right on down through Spokane and right on and widened the Columbia River Gorge. Some of it spilled out into the Willamette Valley and carried boulders there. All of this happened real fast. We used to live in Spokane, and we lived up the side of a hill a little bit. Whenever we wanted to plant a plant in our yard, we had to dig up rocks that were like potatoes, round river rocks. And there's no river around there. There's no creek around there. Where did these round rocks come from? This. So the Missoula flood. So J. Harlan Bretz provided all kinds of support for his view. He even took pictures from airplanes of giant ripple marks that clearly were done with, a lot of water. Finally, he got some of them to actually go to see this place, Dry Falls, in person. And they contacted him back with this. Okay, Harlan, we're all now catastrophists like you. So he won him over. What's interesting is it took him 40 years. He was an old man, but at least he was alive to hear them come to his conclusion. Then you know what he said after all that? He said, now we need to look at the Grand Canyon, because the Grand Canyon gives evidence of rapid formation. Okay, I told you I was going to talk about it. Here we go. Where were you? Looking around here, there was a lot of you that were. Okay, where were you on Sunday morning, May 18, 1980? Could you see it from here? Okay, you could see the plume from here. Did you hear anything? Could you hear an explosion? What's really interesting, because we're talking about the North Face blew up. And north of Mount St. Helens, even as far as Vancouver, BC, they heard the explosion. People nearby in Portland didn't hear anything. So it's funny, the sound went with the eruption north. and it was amazing. I love volcanoes. Of course, you just got that with my little thing. I love volcanoes. They're very interesting to me. What is a volcano? Think of a volcano as a bump in the ground. There's something underneath that's trying to get out. It's either gas or it's liquid rock, lava, trying to push up and get out. That's what a volcano is. Now think of tops in two categories. One is going to have cracks or weak areas where if something's trying to get out, it can get out. Others are like corks on a bottle, and there's no cracks that are solid. That's Mount St. Helens. Hawaii is the other kind, and lava just comes out easily and flows right into the ocean and makes more Hawaii. So it's all good. But anyway, not this. Mount St. Helens got to the point where, toward the very end, the north face was actually being pushed out 5 feet a day by the bulging underneath, 5 feet a day. And as that north side kept pushing out, something happened, a little tremor, a little minor earthquake, and that north face broke off and slid down. When that happened, it was a cork off the bottle. So, for instance, this part right here was up here, and it broke off and slid down. They got a picture of it at that speed, at that place. And then because it's down now, boom, out it comes, all of this. And there was 57 people that died, give or take one. 57 people that died, and about 8 of them were in unsafe areas. They were there with permission, scientists, whatever, or Harry Truman, you know that story, that guy that wouldn't move. They were in the danger area, but the others that were killed were in safe areas, they thought. It's just that the eruption was so much larger than they anticipated. So anyway, very powerful. But you know, we learned something here from Mount St. Helens. And I'm not going to talk about the logs now. I want to talk about this. North Fork of the Toutle River is right where we got a little Grand Canyon suddenly made. Now that little Grand Canyon has got rock formations, layers of rocks there, and there that were laid down by the eruption and the rocks coming down the side of the hill, and they layered, and they even graded beds. They layered, and then over a few years now, they are rock now, solid rock. And of course, the water coming down, the melted snow coming down the mountain actually carved a little canyon in it. And so here's a quick way to get a Grand Canyon, or at least a little one. So it shows you that catastrophism is an answer for things. Now, that with the logs on the other part of the story that are the petrified forest subject. I don't want to over-dramatize this, but I really think there's something to it. You know how the prophecy of the falling stars, 1833 meteor shower, happened mostly in New England. Why there? I think because people were very anxious about last day events. They had their Bibles, they were reading it, and I think God permitted that interesting natural event to be seen by his people there at that time. Of course, that's one of the last day events in the book of Revelation. I'm thinking that God allowed Mount St. Helens to happen in America in these last days to provide us more evidence for the flood and for catastrophism. And I really believe that it happened here for that reason, because it's been studied with that in mind. Now, take a look at the Grand Canyon and the layers of rock there. Take a look at this. Now, you tell me what kind of natural process could make layers of rock that thick, that flat, over areas that are the size of counties. Huge deposits of rock, cubic miles of rock. What makes something flat like that right on top of another one? Now understand that the general view, the popular view, is that there's millions of years involved here. That would mean that, let's say, for instance, this was the top of the ground for quite a while. Well, I mean, even Kansas isn't that flat. Water will make little divots and little valleys and little whatevers, but we don't see anything like that. There's no age being shown at the top of this. It looks like this layer was put on immediately on top of that. Do you understand what I mean? Do this, it's sort of a universal. Okay, so, all right. So now I understand, I don't need to keep telling you about it. So the point is we have these kind of things. There's no river deltas, the Mississippi River Delta or something like that, where rivers are emptying out and making layers. There's nothing remotely like this going on in the world today. And it would really take a whole lot of faith to say, no, we don't think this shows anything other than just millions of years. Oh yeah, that's right, I just put this picture in. This is, anybody here been to Glacier National Park? Okay, there is a hike that you take, that you go up that, what is that, the thing of the sun, the valley of yeah, and you go up to the top and there's a hike that goes over to a hidden lake, I think. It's called the Valley, Hidden Lake Trail or something like that. Okay, we did this with a bunch of pathfinders, imagine that. And we're going up this hill, the steps and everything, and I'm looking at the rock. All the rock is like, oh, look at all these water ripples in this rock up here at high elevation in Glacier National Park. It's, you know, you got to really be pretty blind to not see the evidence for water deposited rock all over the world, and certainly at heights. Let's keep going. So where is this? What's it called? Monument Valley. That's right. This is on the Nevada-Utah border. And you take a look at this thing. It's real easy to see that right here used to be the top of the ground. Wouldn't you say? Okay, so that's the top of the ground. Where did all this material go? It's certainly not down here anywhere. It's not even in the same zip code. So where did it go, and how did it get there? And there is only one answer, folks. It had to be a lot of water moving with power. And frankly, if these things were still soft, if the sediments were still soft, recently deposited, it would be much easier to transport that area way far away. And incidentally, this is upstream from the Grand Canyon. Now, even evolutionists will say that what we're looking at here is some kind of what we would call a drainage event. Water drained from here, kind of like that Missoula flood. The water drained out of here and took stuff with it. So we think toward the end of the flood, the continents were rising, and water was flowing off of the continents into the ocean basins and making our oceans today. As that was happening, sometimes the water would be flowing easily, and sometimes it might bottleneck somewhere, get blocked for a while, and then it got free and cut out and got to the ocean. And so something like that happened here. But again, hard to explain. Incidentally, if you're bending rock layers, is it easier to bend them when they're soft or when they're hard? So evolutionists would say this took millions of years with pressure on hard rocks, and I think, no, this is soft stuff that got moved while it was still soft. But anyway, science is based on trying to answer questions. If you start with a good question, you'll probably do better science. Here's a good question. When we look at the crust of the earth, we know water's been involved. When we see them, what better explains what we're looking at? Either much water over little time or little water over much time. And that's really the issue. That's really the issue. So it depends upon whether you can look at the data. The data is going to be the same, whether you can look with an open mind to catastrophism. All right, class, what are the three basic kinds of rocks? Go, we got a young person back here who's going to answer. Let's go ahead. What? What did he? Sandstone is the type, but what's the class? There's three classes of rocks. Come on now, what is sandstone a part of? It's okay. Okay, you can help them out. Go on, help them out. What do you think? Let's start with sedimentary rock, okay? Sedimentary rock is made out of sediments like sandstone. Sandstone is sedimentary rock. So it's destroyed rock. It's rock that used to be something else. And so now it's all been destroyed, pummeled, made tiny pieces of, and re-cemented into something else. That's what sedimentary rock is. So, can you date sedimentary rock? You can't, because it's made out of so many different materials. Which little pebble, little flake are you dating? Because it might be something different. So you can't date sedimentary rock. Incidentally, salt is sedimentary rock. Did you know you sprinkle rocks on your French fries? You don't agree with me? That's what you do. It's water soluble. It carries a flavor. So salt is a sedimentary rock. Okay, igneous rock is the second kind, and think of something that ignited. It was hot and then it becomes solid. So that's what an igneous rock is. Basalt is actually lava. That's the name of lava when it becomes a rock. And then finally, metamorphic rock, which is one of the first two things that's been cooked into something else, different. Now, guess what? 75% of all rock is sedimentary rock. Take a look at the Grand Canyon. It is all sedimentary rock there in Arizona. So sedimentary rock is far and away the most common, and you need water to make it. So, interesting. Okay, let's keep going. And what is the Bible for evolutionists? It's not Darwin's book. It is, in fact, the geologic column, the layers of rocks. They believe the layers of rock contain the inerrant history of the earth in it. Actually, I agree, but boy, is it open to interpretation. And that's where it gets muddy. Pardon the pun. Okay, anyway, so the geologic column. Now, this is the standard view with millions of years on the side. Those, I don't believe those, but that's the standard view. So it's in three eras, Paleozoic. These are life eras. Paleozoic, early life, middle life, recent life. And then they have the periods and so forth. Right down there between the Cambrian and the Precambrian is where fossils start. Now, we would say as creationists and flood believers, that's where the flood started. That's where the flood rocks started to accumulate. What's really interesting is, at the very beginning of the fossil record, most types of critters are found. Most families or classification of critters are immediately there, down at the bottom. That's really hard to explain from an evolutionary standpoint if you're trying to imagine that life starts off with a couple of kinds and then becomes more kinds and then more kinds and then more kinds. That's really not what happens at all. Including it has a trilobite. Have you ever heard of a trilobite before? Trilobites are like, I call them water cockroaches. But anyway, they were like little water bugs that were around the edge of bodies of water, and as the mud was coming down from the flood, they were the first things that got covered up. So they're at the bottom of the fossil layer. Anyway, but what's interesting about them, and boy, there are nerds that love trilobites. There are clubs and societies, trilobite fans. It's the funniest thing. Anyway, okay, so guess what? The trilobite has eyes. Okay, big deal? No. There's different kinds of trilobites. Some have eyes like insects. Some have eyes like fish. Some have eyes like on poles. Eyes are supposed to be the top of the pyramid for evolution, for eyes to develop. And to find things with fully developed and different kinds of eyes at the bottom of the fossil layer is really hard to explain. For instance, supposedly eyes used to be some kind of light-sensitive patch on the body of some critter. And somehow or other it could orient itself to the sun that way. Okay, that's the beginning of eyes. So over time, those little light patches eventually evolved into focusing eyes. Okay, so that's what happened. At least that's what they say. Okay, and where did I put? There it is. So, interesting. They're so complex immediately at the beginning. Now, this is Dr. Ariel Roth, who is Dean of Adventist scientists. He's still alive, bless his heart, he's in his 90s. Scientists commonly refer to this abrupt transition, the beginning of so many critters, as the Cambrian explosion. Depending on the classification scheme to use, about 30 to 40 or more animal phyla, the major categories of animals, appear right there. Fewer known new basic types show up above this level. This sudden appearance challenges any idea of long gradual evolutionary process. Now, if there's only one quote you guys leave with up here, make it this one, because this is the best one yet. This is from Stephen Jay Gould, and I always thought of Stephen Jay Gould as the Pope of evolution. He's passed now, brilliant biology professor at Harvard. Funny, articulate, because always good for a quote. So he's in every old PBS and Nature and Nova kind of thing on origins. But notice what he says, well-respected scientist. The extreme rarity of transitional forms in the fossil record persists as a trade secret of paleontology. Now, what is that? What's a trade secret? What's a trade secret? Right, you keep it in-house. It's like with your peers. You don't go public with it. You don't tell anybody else. It's just a, hey, guys, we got problems kind of thing. That's a trade secret. Now, he says there's something that persists as a trade secret. Year after year after year after year. It's a problem. It's a secret. What is it? He's saying that the rarity, extreme rarity of transitional forms in the fossil record. What is he saying? He's saying this, that we've got lots and lots of these kind of fossils. We've got bird fossils, we got frog fossils, we got horse fossils, and all of these different kind of fossils. We got thousands, we got hundreds of thousands. You know what we don't have hardly any of? Any of the fossils along that. We don't have any pre-horse, pre-frog, pre-dinosaur, pre-anything fossils. And that persists as a problem. Persists meaning we're trying to find ones that fill the gaps and we're not finding them. In fact, Darwin knew all about this in his day. He says, I know there are gaps, but I just know we're going to find more fossils and fill those gaps up. Look at what, look at what this evolutionary scientist said about that. We are now about 120 years after Darwin, and the knowledge record has been greatly, yay, we're finding more fossils, yay! But we now have 250,000 fossil species, but the situation hasn't changed much. We have even fewer examples of evolutionary transition than we had in Darwin's time. What is he saying? He's saying the ones that look promising in Darwin's day, like horse evolution. Have you ever seen a picture in a textbook of a horse, assumed horse evolution? You've got this little tiny critter with several toes, and it's evolving up to a big critter with one toe, the horse, you know, with the hoof is one toe. And the problem is they don't have those fossils. They don't have them, and if they do have one or two of those kind of fossils, are in the wrong order. And so they don't have support for that. And they will admit it if you take them on the side. And so you say, why do you still have them in the textbooks? Well, we think it still teaches a basic truth we'd like to put out there. Oh, a truth that's not supported by the evidence. So, does this make sense? Are you following this?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, here we go. Why do we even have fossils? How come we have a whole bunch of fish fossils? We have billions of fish fossils. Look at this fossil. That's beautifully preserved. I know it's in the eyes of the beholder, but that, folks, is a gorgeous fossil. So how do you even get something like that? How do you preserve it like that? What's interesting is this guy's an evolutionist, and he says, especially about fish fossils, today, no fossils are formed. When a fish dies, it doesn't get preserved. It gets eaten up. And he says, you know what we always say, it's the same things going on today as always. How can that be? Because we're not making fossils today. You know, fishes get eaten up today. So something's wrong with our thinking. That guy, I like him. Anyway, he's fun. Okay, now the next slide I'm going to show you took me a whole day to make. You can tell that I wish I were an animator at heart. I'm a budding, hopeful, someday when I grow up, animator. So I'm going to make this slide, show it to you, and I would appreciate some sort of recognition of the work I put into it at the end of this. Okay, here we go. Ice Age. And first of all, Ice Age, no one knows what causes it. No one knows what did it. I can give you this length of quotes from scientists who study this and say, we do not know what caused the Ice Age. Problem is, it's got to have cold summers and lots of precipitation. And you don't get that from anything except a heavily volcanic acted flood. Okay, but we don't want to talk about that. So we don't know what did it. Watch this, okay? So this is my effort, which is really outstanding. Okay, wait, no, we haven't done it yet. This is I cut and pasted that. I didn't do anything there. Okay, so here are mountains, but they're actually volcanoes. They're offshore in the water, and here is dry land over to the right. This is what happened. Volcanoes along the edge of the water, this is toward the end of the flood, caused ash to go over the dry land. What that does is that keeps the sun's rays from penetrating and warming the land. This is a way of making cold ground, is by having volcanic ash. This is known. So what happened? But when you heat up water with volcanoes, you increase precipitation. Evaporation comes over here, drops onto that cold land, snow, and that's how you get it. And thank you very much. This is terrible. I'm sorry. You know what I liked in kindergarten best of all other days? Show and tell. I still remember it. Anyway, okay, so cold summers and that's how you get ice age. What's interesting about this is the people that believe in the flood are believing in the only model that could provide an ice age. Only model. Because you got to have a significant triggering event for that to happen. And that's to linger for years. So it's the only thing. Anyway, let's keep going. So we think, incidentally, it lasted for a few hundred years, not thousands of years. And it's very interesting where the ice age was. It's above North America, Siberia, across over to Greenland a little bit on Scandinavia, but not over the rest of Russia. So why is that? They're as far as north as anything else. It's some of the questions about ice age. And again, it happened in our neck of the woods. Why? Because we have lots more volcanoes than anybody else. So right along that, that Alaska line and so forth. Okay, I'm just going to skip this real quick. We got a problem as creationists, and when I'm talking to a secular group and I don't admit that there's a couple things we still are working on, they'll just think I'm a Bible-thumping know-nothing, which I could be anyway, I guess. But the point is this: you got to acknowledge problems to have some foundation and talk with other scientists. Fossil order. We got a problem. Why is it that dinosaurs, for instance, are only in the Cretaceous, the Jurassic, and the top of the Triassic, and that is it? They are nowhere else. Why is that? So let's think about the mechanism for the flood to help answer this. So this is a piece of sandstone from near the Grand Canyon. This is Coconino sandstone. Coconino sandstone is famous for having footprints in it. Okay? This piece of rock is about this big, and it's got a bunch of footprints of some kind of a lizard-like animal of about an inch wide foot. No webbing, only claws. So with it being sand, it kind of looks like a dry, sand-made formation of some kind. Don't know. Don't see a lot of water. Certainly not. It's not a water animal that's walking in it. So how can we make this kind of footprint with this kind of mounding on the backside of it? How do you get that? So Dr. Leonard Brand of Loma Linda University wanted to replicate the shape of the footprint. How do I get that footprint? Because prior to this, it's assumed this is a desert formation. So no water, basically. So he put sand in a tank. He got a salamander, and he said, "You are my volunteer." Walk. Boom. And so it started to make footprints. Could not make the same footprints in dry sand. So added some water. Still couldn't make it. Added a lot of water. Still couldn't make the same footprints. Finally added so much water that literally the animal, the salamander, was splashing as it was walking, and that did it. So it had to have water to the highest level. So take a look at this. What you're seeing here is at least 3 animals. Incidentally, we never found a single bone of this critter. We don't know what it was. But anyway, some kind of lizard-like thing. At least 3 of them are walking this direction. They're all walking the same direction. Why? They are walking away from rising water. Now, that's important to understand. Because, for instance, if the dinosaurs, let's go back to that illustration, lived in a certain area, a certain region, and the water was rising, and they ran out of room, they ran out of height, then those dinosaurs would have been covered and preserved kind of together, kind of with their neighborhood, the whatever the flora was, the kind of plants, and the animals that lived there and everything got more or less covered in the same area because the waters rose slowly. And it didn't throw them into some kind of washing machine kind of action where everything was all mixed together from all different places, which I kind of imagine the flood to have been, some kind of washing machine thing. And when the water would come down, everything would be deposited in a sort of a mix, a homogeneous kind of thing. It's not the way it is at all. Everything's very carefully sorted. So obviously, if you're an evolutionist, you think, well, that's millions of years. These evolved into these, evolved into these. No, we just think that they were collected according to the regions that they lived in, and the water rose slowly up. Now let's keep going on that. Oh, we're going to skip that video for now. Just how big was the ark, incidentally? What did they use for measurements? Cubits. And I just saw somebody illustrate it. It's from here to here, right? Or if we're talking about people of your and my size, about 18 inches. So 300 cubits of the ark would have amounted to 450 feet, 70 feet, 5 feet wide, 45 high. 3 decks had a total capacity of 1.5 million cubic feet. If you were to use modern train cars, how many train cars loads could you get inside there? 522. That's pretty big. That's pretty good capacity. And this is only if you're using the conservative measurements of cubits the size of Moses. Are you thinking about it like I am thinking about it? Okay, anyway, if we're talking bigger people. Okay, anyway, so let's go conservative. There it is. Now, pairs of all creatures that had the breath of life came. So this can't be at the species level. We have 1 million species. Can't be at the species level. It's got to be up higher in the classification. What kind of animals are in the ark? Because we can't have 1 million animals in there. So what could we have? I attended a lecture at a creation conference where a biology professor from Southern Adventist University was presenting a talk on that subject. And he basically came to the conclusion that it was of the family level. In other words, 2 wolves for all of the dog-type animals we've got. Foxes, coyotes, dingoes, wolves produce our dogs and so forth, all delineated from that 2 original pair of wolves. Cats, same thing. One time I was in Coos Bay, Oregon, and I was doing a week of prayer at one of the schools there. And so I had a little time in the afternoon, so I'm driving toward Bandon, and which is on the coast. And on the way there, I'm driving through the mountains and pretty trees and everything. There's this sign coming up, petting zoo ahead. I thought, well, what do we got? Goats or something? You know, and I keep driving. And so then it had pictures of lions and tigers and things. So, okay. I'd go a little further, and it says, largest petting zoo in North America. Okay, I'm pulling in. So I got a chance to hold a little baby red fox, a cub, just that big pup, just like that, really cute. Got to touch a bunch of other animals. And then we came up to a snow leopard. Now, a snow leopard has a mile-long tail. It's just the longest tail on an animal in terms of proportion that you probably could imagine. But anyway, there was this beautiful animal there, and the handler said, I'm sorry, this snow leopard is 1 year and 1 week old, and by federal law, if it's older than a year, I can't let you touch it. We all wanted to pet this leopard. But you know what he did do? He had a string with a ball and a feather on it, and he started to play with this snow leopard. And this snow leopard, this gorgeous big animal, started bouncing off the walls of this room and everything, trying to get this, this feather ball. And I said, I know what that is. That's a kitty cat. I've had kitty cats. That's a kitty cat. It's got the wiring, the brain, the everything. that my little kitty cat had. It's the same family. It's the same, I can easily imagine it being down to family order. When I asked this professor, how many pairs are you talking about then? He said, 700, 800, something like that. Oh, well, that's manageable on the ark. Now, here's the thing. I've got another theory that's a good one that you can't disprove. And it has to do with something from the Bible about the spreading of animals and so on. Noah had a grandson named Cush. You know what the word Cush means? Cush in Hebrew means black. And Cushites in the rest of the Old Testament are Africans. So Noah had a grandson that was the beginning of the African race. Within just 2 generations of Noah, we've got these races spreading out across the world. So there was vitality, there was strength in the DNA, there was a healthiness of these people. I mean, they lived to be what, 900? I mean, they have stuff that we've all evolved the other direction, right? We could not do any of that. But the point is, the vitality provided this variety of human beings within a short period of time. I think the animals were the same way. I think the animals could produce a wide variety of offspring. Again, the pre-flood animal getting off into the new world. We had new habitats and new things. But anyway, yes, did you have some? Tower of Babel was just after the flood. We don't know how many years, a generation or two. Oh, no, the grandson was, let me see. Because he got off, so Ham, it's Ham's son. Ham got off didn't have any kids until after they got off so I don't know what the time frame is. I'd have to look it up. Why would that matter? It could be, if that represented absolutely everybody at the Tower of Babel. It might not have represented everybody. It might have been a group that was saying, phooey on God, come on guys, let's go over here. But anyway, good question. I'll have to look it up now to see the timing. But, so I think we're talking about 700, 800, or maybe, let's go with a bigger number for just the fun of it, and let's be really conservative. Let's assume for a minute that we're talking about 1,600 animals on the ark. And if there's that many with provisions for a year, you'd still have half of the ark unused. So why was the ark so big? Why was the ark so big? Food? Thank you. Thank you. I really believe it. You know what? Kids get it quicker than adults usually. Kids will quickly say, God wanted to save more people. And I think that's true. God wanted to save more people than just 8. Plenty of room. There's plenty of room on the ark still. Now, I'm going to wind up with what I consider to be the most common question that comes out of a talk like this. And that is, what happened to the people? When the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually, what did he think about that? The Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. Those are very strong words in Hebrew. He was really deeply in pain over what man had become. I think this is one of the saddest verses in the Bible. It's very loaded and very deep. So he decided he was going to do something about it and start over again, basically. So the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth. The word destroy there in Hebrew, think about a Israelite woman who's at the kitchen sink, and she's got her plates, and she's going to get ready to wash them. This is what she does with the stuff on the plate. She does this. This is what I'm going to do with man, God says. I'm going to do this off the face of the earth. Pretty accurate. Not a lot of evidence of all of that was before the flood. So, but let's try to come up with a physical explanation of what happened to people. Remember that Coconino sandstone with the footprints showing that water rose slowly. If water is rising slowly, what are the people doing? They're looking, where is the highest mountain I can get to? And if you're familiar with a book written by one of the pioneers of the Adventist church, Ellen White, she writes that the people sought the mountaintops. And there they went, some of them even tying children to animals to see if they could survive. And so the people went up to the top of hills, and what does it say? And the waters prevailed exceedingly on the earth, and all the high hills under the whole heaven were covered, meaning they drowned. But notice what it says further. And the waters prevailed on the earth 150 days. So if there are any people that got to the top of hills and the water caught up with them and they drowned, they're in the waters for 150 days. And what were those waters like? They were prevailing. They were winning. They were not just some glassy-looking surface. This was heavy activity going on. And while that is going on for 150 days in the water, what's going to be left of the people? Not too much. And when the water does come down, drop, and the land becomes dry, their remains are going to be where? On the top of the ground. They're not buried under hundreds of feet of sediment like all the others, the animals and the plants and so on. So they're not preserved as fossils. Does this make sense? So anyway, yes?
I just want to make a point. So many skeptics will describe this flood, but they don't believe it, as being this last war. It's just water. It wasn't just water.
It was yes. Yes. The surface of this earth in no way resembles pre-flood earth. The destruction was unbelievable, and it's quite literally true. Someone made a point of saying God was going back to the first day of creation, where the earth was void and without form, and waters were on the face of the earth. Yes?
As a geologist and somebody who likes rocks, you'll appreciate this, because when you tumble rocks, what happens to the rocks?
They become, yes.
Into a disaster where the slide came down and washed out an entire community. We were finding small pieces of people because the water, mud, debris washed them into small pieces. And so many of the found people we found very, very microscopic.
Yeah, yeah.
So when the earth was broken up and this great violence of the
Mm-hmm.
flood happened,
Mm-hmm.
the idea of the bodies, because for search and rescue, bodies sink initially, float to the top, then sink down again, and when they sink with that violent rock tumbling,
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that insight from somebody who would know. You know what? I'm actually of that group of people, and if you come up here, you'll get a chance to lift this. This is an iron nickel meteorite, rather heavy. I'm actually in that group of people that believes that maybe God started the flood with a series of asteroid strikes or meteors. And the reason I think that, there's several reasons. Number one, theologically, God throws rocks for in judgments. Think about the image of Daniel that Nebuchadnezzar saw, struck with a rock from heaven made out without human hands. That was a day of judgment. Sodom and Gomorrah and all that. But more importantly, there's other physical things that it would do. It would break up the crust of the earth. It could pressurize water underneath the earth by the strikes. It could potentially knock the earth off its axis, like this. Because it's very interesting, after the flood, God's talking to Noah, basically says, this is how it's going to be from now on. He said, among other things, he says, now we're going to have cold and warm, and we're going to have seasons. And that comes from this. So I don't know if all those things work together, to make a case. Of course, you've heard about dinosaurs were destroyed by meteorite strikes. Well, there's evidence of some strikes during the flood. In other words, different places of impact around the world that seem to be meteor strikes in the fossil record even, or in other words, in the layers of sedimentary rock. So it could be that there was a series. If you've ever looked at the backside of the moon, and who hasn't? Okay, backside of the moon. No one gets to see a picture very often, but they got pictures. super, super pot-marked with meteorite strikes. And if you were to put the moon with the Earth in the background, it's on a in other words, it's like it blocks things that are going to go to the Earth. So wherever it is, maybe there were some meteors. Yeah, okay, I could talk about it all day. Anyway, so okay, let's wind this one up, because this one is funny. You got to look at this quote. These are evolutionists that are talking about population. These are population experts. Notice what they're concerned about. Why are there so few people in the world? If we humans came out of Africa 1 to 2 million years ago, there should be many more people today. All right? What happened to the human population and the corresponding larger genetic variation? The question is asked by experts. That means you've got to come up with a hypothesis for an event that wiped out the vast majority of that genetic variation. Something caused the human population to drop drastically. When or how often that may have happened is anybody's guess. Possible culprits include, disease, environmental disaster, and conflict. What are they saying? They're saying if we came out of Africa 1 or 2 million years ago, walking down the streets of the Tri-Cities would be something like this. Pardon me. Excuse me. Whoop. Pardon me. There should be so many people. They're really saying something happened in the past that, I don't know, got us down to like 8 people. What could that have been? Don't you want to be the kid in class going, ooh, ooh, call on me, call on me. Anyway, very interesting. Did you know Mount Everest has, where is it? Right there. Granite, metamorphic rock, sedimentary rock toward the top with fossils at 30,000 feet almost high. Pretty good. And God said, you saw that verse before? Whoops. At thy rebuke, the floodwaters fled. At the voice of thy thunder, they hastened away. The mountains rose. How do we get? I've got a trilobite. I've got a little shell, bivalve shell, regular kind of seashell. It came from 14,000 feet up the Andes Mountains. How do you explain that? The mountains rose. Mountains rose. Incidentally, whenever you see the Himalaya Mountains, that's right on the border of China and India, right? So they've thought that, what happened was thousands, millions of years, it's like pushing. Bum, 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 Himalayas. This is what I think. Toward the end of the flood, this is China, or this is Asia, and this is India. That's what I think happened. Smack! That's how you get 6 miles up in the air, a wrinkle called the Himalayas. Anyway, okay. Boy, I'm talking too much. Let's see. I told you about this already. I don't think I need to do this again. Yeah, okay. We talked about that before, and I did do that already. So, okay. The thing I like to end on is this quote. And when I had my Tri-Cities worship with the kids on Friday, what is that, yesterday? Yesterday, I closed with this challenge. I said, Jesus said that in the days before the flood, they're eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that the flood, that Noah entered the ark, did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So also will the coming of the Son of Man be. What does this mean? This means they'll be working on a new Costco. They'll be having traffic problems around construction zones. There'll be somebody in Washington, D.C. that says something that's really dumb and everybody's talking about it. There'll be some kind of dating going on between a sports star and somebody famous, okay? In other words, the news will be just simply going on and on. You'll be getting up, you'll be going to work, you'll be doing something, get ready for school, telling the kids you might be going to school. And then suddenly, Jesus comes. And it will catch everybody by surprise. The vast majority of people in the world will not be ready. The question is, will you be ready? And the only reason, I'm talking now to big kids, the only reason that I don't, shall we say, use my option for real retirement, because I'm plenty old enough, only reason I go do this is I want everybody to be ready. I want everybody to be ready. The evidence of the flood is evidence that Jesus is coming back. Guaranteed. God destroyed the world once before by water. You know what John the Baptist said? I use water to clean you, but there's somebody coming after me with fire. Water is a temporary washer and cleaner. Fire is permanent. He's coming. Like I said, global warming is coming. And the point is this: are we ready? Are our friends and family ready? Because it's going to catch so many people off guard. You know, I normally have a prayer at the end of this, so I think I'll do it, even though we're going to do another talk. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, there are people here I know that are ready for the day Jesus comes, and there may be some that aren't. And for those that are not sure, not ready, I pray, Lord, that your Spirit works upon their hearts and let them know that the ark doors are wide open. We can get in there, we will be safe, and we may have to ride through some tough times in the future, but we know that you'll be with us to keep us safe. Heavenly Father, bless the people of this church and their ministry, and may the word go out in the community that a great day is coming soon, and we all need to get ready for it, because it will only be a door opening into a greater and better future. Thank you for hearing us. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, lights up for just a minute, if you would. And before I go talk about dinosaurs, and I put dinosaurs purposely after this, because I know people wanted to hear about dinosaurs. If I did dinosaurs first, you'd leave. So anyway, do it this way. So we're going to talk about dinosaurs, but right now,
I'm going to take a little break. We have some food,
okay.
and then come back maybe in 10 minutes.
Oh, is this when the food is? I knew they were marrying food, but I thought it was at the end of everything.
This is, no, they're going to do the, some dessert type stuff right now,
Okay.
and then come back in 10 minutes.
Okay, 10 minutes is good. It's 3 o'clock straight up. So let's come back at 3:10. 3:10. No, you guys you're gonna drop like flies. I know it. But anyway, 3:10. Okay, all right. No, I'm good. But the doors of the ark. Okay. Okay, here we go. Let's talk about dinosaurs. Yeah. Everybody's curious about that. And it's only because they're intelligent. I love dinosaurs and dragons, so we're going to talk about that. Can we close the doors of the ark? Probation is closing. Come on in, everybody. I've got my sugar. I'm good. Just don't start nodding off on me. That's it. You know what? My most favorite way when I'm preaching in a sermon, even in my own church when I was pastoring, and I saw somebody nodding off, this is what I would do. Work like a charm. Anyway, a couple of kids I had to do that with too this week. Okay, dragons and dinosaurs. Let's talk about dragons and dinosaurs. You all know that the Bible talks about a dragon, right? Let's go. Here we go. Come on. Don't poop out on me now. Maybe this advancer needed some sugar too. Okay, it's not working. Okay, we're back to that. Okay, here we go. So, the dragon. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. When you think of the word dragon, what's the image that pops up in your brain? Dragon. Is it something like that? Something pointy? Fire breathing or whatever, this kind of thing? Well, guess what? That's pretty much a medieval image. It's pretty much from the Middle Ages. When you go all the way back to the time that John was writing the book of Revelation, the word dragon or drakon simply meant a big reptile, large lizard. So it didn't really have any of the other kinds of constitutional things to make it up. So I want you to remember that because that's an important part. So here we go. When people were starting to find dinosaur bones, what did they think they were? Well, here's the first scientist who wrote a paper about a bone he found in England, Oxford University. And this is a chemistry department guy. And check out his hair. It's pretty cool. So anyway, yeah, I'm trying to be a scientist someday. Grow your hair like that. So he wrote a paper about a bone he found in England. And the bone was like that, and very much like this one up here, if you see this on the table, very similar to this dinosaur bone. So he thought, however, that it was from an elephant brought to Britain by the Romans. And so it was kind of from when they used to run England, right? So it was an elephant bone, and that's a good guess, but we know that wasn't it. He didn't know about dinosaurs. Sometimes scientists are wrong. Now, let's take a look at this. This is a pastor who had a church in a Connecticut village, and he noticed by the side of the road in a little town there, hundreds of footprints that look like big, giant ostrich footprints. And so he thought maybe a long time ago, ostriches were walking around in Connecticut. Well, guess what? Whoops. They were indeed dinosaur footprints, because pastors are sometimes wrong. This is actually a footprint cut out of the rock there in Connecticut from the same deposit that he was looking at. So take a look at this. This is basically a footprint of what you might call some kind of a velociraptor, some small predator or something. It's got the 3 toes. But maybe the size of me, maybe, or so, not a huge dinosaur. They never found a single bone of that dinosaur, even though they've got literally tens of thousands of footprints of it. Anyway, but again, you see they're troubled. They don't really know what they're looking at. Let's keep going. In England, they found a tooth that a Dr. Mantell showed to his friends, and trying to identify it, and he finally went up and said, well, I'll tell you what it looks like, but it can't be that. Well, what does it look like? It looks like an iguana's tooth, but it's too big, way too big, 20 times too big, in fact. So it wasn't until they found more bones of this dinosaur that eventually called it an iguanodon or an iguana tooth. Now take a look at the picture. That's kind of funny, isn't it? Look at this is one of the first renderings of what eventually would be understood to be a dinosaur. I just think it's very archaic looking, kind of cool. Anyway, they found more bones of an iguanodon, and now they think probably more like that. And they also found a jawbone with a tooth in it that really surprised them, and they thought it was maybe this kind of an animal. They call it a megalosaurus, or big lizard. Whenever you see saurus on the end of the word, that means something lizard, okay? So, it was this fellow, a Christian incidentally, scientist in England. If you've never heard of Darwin, this would have been probably the most famous scientist of the 19th century in England. He set up the British Museum. Anyway, he was an anatomist, a Christian, and he came up with this word for these bones they were finding. He called them an awesome lizard, Dinosauria. Sauria. And so, anyway, Dinosauria is I'd like to point out to skeptics, maybe, or unbelievers, that it was a Christian that came up with the word dinosaur. Okay, so they put on display in this early World's Fair kind of thing in London in 1851, and they put on display these two critters, and it was really a sensation for them. But again, these are just statues and imaginations. It wasn't until this guy did something that I think really put dinosaurs on the world map. This was a scientist in Philadelphia, and he had a museum downtown Philadelphia. Heard about a woman just over in New Jersey, just over the border in New Jersey, that had a backyard with big bones in it. So he was able to get permission to excavate those bones, put them together like a jigsaw, right? Put them all together, and eventually put on display something he called a hadrosaur, duck-billed dinosaur, in 1868 in his museum. Didn't have a skull, had to make one out of paper mache, and he put it up on the end of the skeleton, and he put this on display in the museum, and guess what? That's the first skeleton on public display in the world. And you go to museums today, they're all over, it seems like. But back then, nobody ever seen anything like this. They didn't know quite what to make of it. You know, creationists especially were hit by the question. This is about the time Darwin's making some waves in Europe, and America's listening to Darwin. And anyway, when you look at something like this, maybe Darwin was right? So things like this were happening that kind of gave them a little bit of it was a perfect storm for evolution. A lot of things going on. Decline of Christianity, the Bible wasn't looked at as historically accurate as it used to be. All those things contributed. They found Archaeopteryx, the bird fossil that looks like a lizard a little bit. They were finding Neanderthal bones in a cave in Germany, and so forth. So all these kind of things kind of gave evolution a little boost, right? So creationists, when they were asked by evolutionists, all right, creationists, you people believe the Bible, where are dinosaurs? So our first couple of reactions were anywhere from, where they came from, anywhere from, I don't know, to, I think the devil made those bones and put them in the ground so we wouldn't believe in the Bible. Stuff like that. So we didn't have great answers. We got good answers now, but we didn't at first. So anyway, Philadelphia is in the United States. They found out they could sell tickets. So people lined up down the street and around the corner to see this thing. Other museums in the United States say, hey, where can we get bones like this? So they started hiring people to go out and dig them up in Montana and Wyoming and the Dakotas and Utah, northern Arizona, and even in up in Canada and the Rockies there, and they were finding bones, big bones, and bringing them back and setting them up in museums all across, especially the eastern part of the country. Incidentally, this is the first dinosaur, the hadrosaur, found. My wife and I, just this last summer, almost a pilgrimage, it was a bucket list thing for me to go to the place where they found this first dinosaur. And it's in a residential area with houses all around. It's kind of funny, but it's sort of a suburb of Philadelphia. Anyway, you know what? They never found another single dinosaur there in that same location since. Not a thing. Seashells, that's it. It's kind of funny. All right, so they hired these guys to go find bones, and today's standards, they would be breaking every law you could imagine, but they were digging up these bones and bringing them back to museums to set them up. Meanwhile, in Europe, they were finding more iguanodons. These were being found in Belgium, of all places. England, they were finding more, and American dinosaurs were now making the trip to Europe to be displayed. This is an American dinosaur. I think a Diplodocus or Brachiosaurus was being shown in the Louvre in Paris. This is turn of the century. So prior to this, up to this time, the only thing to think about were scary about dinosaurs was don't get stepped on, because their teeth all showed that they were vegetarian. In fact, vegan. So they didn't eat meat. They weren't scary except for their size. Incidentally, this is the Brontosaurus in the New York Museum in 1905, and a gorgeous specimen, and they had experts come from around the world, and they looked at this thing and they said, this is a fabulous specimen. I just can't believe how are you sure about the head? Turns out the head was from another dinosaur that they put on it, and so they really had parts of two dinosaurs to make one and called the whole thing Brontosaurus. So to this day, if you want to get in a lively discussion with a dinosaur nerd, ask them, so do you think there is such a thing as a Brontosaurus? Trust me, he will have an opinion, or she will have an opinion. So, but like I say, these were big and giant animals, and people began to wonder, and this was in that museum in New York behind that Brontosaurus, what kind of world are we talking about? What kind of place would it be to see an animal whose head could be up front here and the tail touch the back of that wall? What kind of animal would that be to be around? Okay, so again, like I say, the scariest part of it would be don't get stepped on. The size was immense. But then they found something. They found something with teeth. Okay, what's this going to be about? T-Rex it is. This is about the T-Rex. When they found in 1905 in northeastern Wyoming, Henry Osborn found the first T-Rex, named it the Tyrannosaurus Rex. And of course that means what? King tyrant lizard. Rex is king. So anyway, I've been on the road in northeastern Wyoming where our dino dig is. We'll talk about that in a minute. But a guy was driving me there who knew the area, and he said, Stan, you see that hill up above there, right straight ahead? Yeah, that's where Osborn found it, the first T-Rex. Okay, cool. So there it is on display. That changed the image of dinosaurs. Hollywood loved this, of course. So anyway, now suddenly we're looking at something that looked like it could really do damage. Now, one thing we know, let's talk briefly about T-Rex, because everybody wants to know about T-Rex. Far and away the most popular dinosaur. I'm not sure why, but it is. One thing we know T-Rex ate was, what's this guy? Triceratops. Okay, we know he ate Triceratops. How would we know that? Well, go ahead in the back, say it. That's right, and in the stomach area, they found part of his lunch. And when they looked at his lunch, there were bits and pieces of Triceratops there. Now, here's the thing. That still doesn't answer one of the really big questions, and that is, was T-Rex a predator or a scavenger? Because a scavenger could have eaten a Triceratops, so that didn't tell you anything. So, what do you think? Take a look at this guy. Does he look like he could be a really good predator? Well, the teeth mean business, but what about those little front arms, right? How are they going to catch something? And secondly, you've got a body there that is very, very heavy, very stocky. It doesn't look like it's built for speed. So anyway, those couple of issues, but trust me, they are back and forth on this. Scientists now think that it was a scavenger because ABC. Well, now scientists think this, so it's kind of a fun thing for them to work on. But here's something that's interesting. See, this fossil right here is actually the remains of a Triceratops and a T-Rex. The T-Rex has broken rib bones. The Triceratops has teeth marks on it. And they are all covered and preserved in this one fossil. Now, what's going on there? I'd like to describe, I think, the last moments of these two animals. I think the waters were rising. As I showed you, they came up like this slowly. I think these two animals found a high spot, and they were a little too close to each other. And they started fighting. And then the waters caught up to them and covered them both. I can't think of anything else that would explain this. They're in mudstone, in sandstone. So anyway, okay. So keeping going, there's a footprint of a T-Rex. We know a couple that are undisputed. This one is in New Mexico in a secret location. And anyway, notice 33 inches long, 28 inches wide, 9 inches deep. So a really heavy animal, 9 inches deep. Now this T-Rex was the best ever found for years and years. And you know what that T-Rex name was? Stan. Seriously. Oh yeah, you don't believe me? Yeah, that's Stan. So I've looked better. T-Rex was the best found. This was at 40% complete. And for years, 40% complete was the best T-Rex they'd ever found. And that might make you wonder about skeleton percentages and stuff. How much of the animal do you have to have for it to qualify as a skeleton and not just some remains? Give me a number. What percentage? Boy, you guys. 45. No, 40% was considered a skeleton. It's less than that, though. 10? Did you say 10? 10 is correct. 10%. So, why is that important? 10% of an animal qualifies it as a skeleton. Because watch the news. You're going to say, some dinosaur skeleton was found in Argentina, and it fills in every single gap. It answers every question we've ever had since Darwin had questions. And it's the final missing, it's this incredibly glorious discovery. And then you look at the fine print. They had a little bit of a hip, a bit of a backbone, and the conjecture of what it must have looked like is almost entirely in the mind of the discoverer. And watch a few months later when those discoveries are looked at by other scientists who aren't trying to make a name by a discovery, and you find out that it's, we're unconvinced. It's kind of interesting. So that happens often. So 40% complete was the best until they found a dinosaur named Sue. Discovered in 1990 in South Dakota by the Larson brothers. I got to meet one once in South Dakota, and it was 90% complete. And it was fabulous. And they sold it to the Field Museum in Chicago for $8 million, and that was a steal. It would be many times that now today. But anyway, had a beautiful, it's in the eyes of the beholder, beautiful skeleton, beautiful skull. And right now it's on display in the Field Museum in Chicago, and it is the star of the show. And you know what? Chicago is in America. They sell tickets. And they've paid for Sue many times over. Yes. Oh, yes, yes. Oh, the one that was in situ, right there. This is a picture. Yes, this is a picture of Sue, but they don't show the skull in this one. I'm not sure where the skull was in relation to that, but yeah. Incidentally, when you go to the museum and you see this skeleton, are you looking at the original skeleton? It's really rare. Sometimes you are, and they like to make a point that you're looking at the real thing, but almost always you're looking at a copy. All of these bones are copies for a couple of reasons. Number one, if the real bones fell off and broke, that's a loss. They could potentially fall off onto a tourist and break the tourist. That's not good. So anyway, they like to keep, and they also like to have them available for study. So the skull of Sue is upstairs in a case by itself, and pretty impressive. So anyway, let me tell you this. Did you know that Sue, we don't know if Sue was a girl or a boy. We don't know if Stan was a boy or a girl. We don't know any genders of the dinosaurs. We have no knowledge of how to tell male from female. So remember, they laid eggs, but apparently doesn't require super wide hips or anything for live births. So there's no structural difference that they know of between male and female. So she's named Sue. Why? Because the person that found her was named Sue. Stan was found by a guy named Stan. If you go to Montana and Bozeman, the Montana State University in Bozeman, they got a real nice T-Rex there, and that's Mike. So you can go see Mike. Anyway, but T-Rexes turned out to be creationists' friends. How did that happen? Well, in 2005, a scientist by the name of Schweitzer, Mary Schweitzer, a woman, had a group of people that were studying dinosaur bones. They took a femur of a T-Rex and were studying the interior of it. A couple of accidents happened that were providential, and they were able to see inside and actually saw soft tissue. Soft tissue. How can it be soft? How can organic material still be present in something that's at the minimum 65 million years old? Answer, can't. Wow, you could almost hear the lab person say out loud, screaming across the United States, "We have soft tissue here." What? You can't have soft tissue in something that's that old. You could encase it in lead and it won't be that soft in 65 million years. The woman, like I said, Mary Schweitzer, who published her findings about there being soft materials, like, for instance, a flexible vessel and red blood cell stains, that's all organic material. She published this, and she got hammered by scientists all around the world. No women's advocates were standing up at the time. She got hammered and said, "What kind of scientist do you think you are, publishing such shoddy work? I can't imagine the university. The university should fire you for, who are you? Do you realize this is going to be used by creationists?" I mean, but anyway, you know, she was just hammered back and forth. And fortunately, she was listening carefully to the criticisms, and there are a couple of things that some scientists said that she could have done better. So she went back, redid her research, came back with the same conclusion, and answered those particular critics. And now this is accepted as soft tissue in a dinosaur bone. What's really interesting, a couple of things about this. First of all, this is what she said. Either there are ways of preserving organic materials that we have no concept of right now, or these bones are not as old as we thought. And that's a good science statement, I think. Of course, you know where we are on that. So now you can hear, if you listen carefully, bones being broken all over the country looking for organic material. Actually, there are now studies of people finding organic material in fossils they never thought of looking in before because they were millions of years old. There's nothing going to be left. We use their studies, evolutionist studies, to show them that organic material breaks down, because they've wondered for years, how long does it take for DNA to go away? How long does it take for proteins to disappear? How long does it take for all these different kinds? There's dozens of things they could look for that are organic. How long before they're gone from the fossils? And they've already published many studies, and the studies consistently say thousands of years, thousands of years, thousands of years. Not millions, thousands. So, okay, now that they're free to study and look for the potential of finding more, they are finding more. And I know there's been dozens of discoveries ever since that have found organic material and things previously thought to be millions of years. One even said that they found DNA. That one sounds kind of fishy to me, but anyway, they do have DNA. I know people wonder about the Jurassic Park movies, right? And how can you bring back dinosaurs from the past, you know, if you have a little bit of their DNA? The problem is the movie says that it was in the mosquito in amber, which is petrified tree sap, and somehow or other get the blood from the, you know, this mosquito supposedly bit a dinosaur, got a little bit of the blood inside of it, then it got stuck in tree sap, and then you go inside the mosquito to get that blood, that DNA of that dinosaur, and then you go clone them somehow or other. Almost every single thing in the steps in that is not possible to do, but it sure makes a wonderful movie, right? Exciting to bring back dinosaurs. Folks, the only person who can bring back dinosaurs is Jesus Christ. He is the creator. He could do that if he wants to. We'll talk about that in a minute. So anyway, so let's keep going. So footprints, fossil footprints are fossil evidence of dinosaurs that clearly did walk around. I've seen these. There's a place in Texas called Paluxy River Valley, Glen Rose, Texas, and there are places where there is a little creek and there's footprints of dinosaurs in the creek. And kids are splashing around, and it's kind of like Disneyland or something, except Disney didn't make those footprints. These are naturally put there. It's kind of interesting. I've got a piece up here of dinosaur skin impression. Here it is. And come and take a look at it sometimes. It's this picture right here. So when a dinosaur died, and that means it was killed in the flood, and that means that mud covers it up, that mud would cover the skins of the dinosaur. That mud over time would become rock. The bones, the body would disintegrate, they're leaving bones. And people often would just try to get the bones out, so just kind of break through the rock and let's get the bones, But actually, now they're a little more careful. Sometimes you can actually pop open that old mud or whatever, and you can see the impression of the skin, what the skin looked like. Now, taking a look at that picture up there, you can see that it had reptile skin. And so for those who have doubts that I don't think a dinosaur was a reptile, well, it had reptile skin, at least that you can establish. And then what about eggs? When I was a kid, I imagined that a dinosaur egg would have been about that big. You know what I mean? Had to be big. Guess what? This is a dinosaur egg. And this is about as big as they get. They don't get much bigger than this. Which means that all dinosaurs, even the biggest dinosaurs, started off pretty small. Now, there's all kind of ramifications for that, not the least of which is, did any get on the ark? Because if they were small. Okay, let you think about that. So, yes?
You were talking about the Glen Rose footprints of the dinosaur.
Yes.
I've heard
That there are human footprints next to them or in the same strata. No. Next question? No, I mean, seriously. It's been looked at very carefully. The so-called footprints of humans next to dinosaur footprints in Glen Rose is based on a couple of things. Number one, they've been finding dinosaur footprints there for 100 years, selling them to tourists coming through the area, cutting them out with a saw, selling them to tourists. Then somebody came up with the idea, let's carve human footprints. And then he started selling them to tourists. One of the persons that came along was an Adventist geologist named Burdick. And when he saw it and when he looked at everything, he was convinced that there were genuine human footprints along with dinosaur footprints, and he promoted the idea. And There have been footprints that have been interesting. There have been footprints in the ground that kind of look human. Incidentally, if they were human, they would be the size of your foot and mine, not anybody bigger if they were human. And as you take a look at pictures of these trackways, you see, yeah, kind of human. Well, about the right human. Oh, no, that one up there looks dinosaur. Oh, that one looks, you know what I mean? So it seems like water was messing with some of these as they were being deposited and played around with the shape and form. That's it. I've always got a few fans. Okay, I'll run into a fan of human footprints with that. I don't think humans lived in the dinosaur neighborhood. I think they lived on the planet Earth at the same time, but I don't think they lived near them. Yes?
Took the anthropology class back in 2000.
Yes?
And the anthropology professor had a picture of the Anatoli footprints.
Yes?
And he was describing these trackways.
Yes.
Some were very dinosaur. And he said some of them were very hominid or pre-modern.
Oh, yes.
And I asked him, I said, now, are they all traveling? This sort of relates to the
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I said, well, why are they all walking in the same direction?
Yeah.
He said,
Okay.
well, we really don't know why.
Okay.
And I said, is it possible they were trying to get away from rising floodwaters? But he didn't question that these were human-like footprints.
The Laetoli footprints, what he's talking about is a set of footprints by two humans, looks like they're humans just like my foot and yours, an adult and a child, and they're walking along, and they made their footprints in ash, volcanic ash. So, and they were barefoot. So they might have been, I don't know, hot, you know, whatever. But anyway, they walked across there. What's interesting is because you can date ash with the lava dating method, you can date it, and it comes out to 3.7 million years. So here's the problem for them. There weren't humans on the planet Earth at 3.7 years. That's a couple of million years too early. So they don't talk much about Laetoli footprints, but it's very interesting. Anyway, I'm sorry, don't mean to chase too many. My problem is I chase rabbits. I do it all the time. So, okay, so you've seen showed you the egg. Oh, incidentally, this one does not have embryos in it. Maybe 1 out of 10,000 do. There are very, very few that actually have embryos in it. And this is solid. This is, you know, most of them are found solid, and rock has gotten into them. I could talk about this at length, but I'll make it short. This is a dinosaur dig that Southwestern Adventist University has out in northeastern Wyoming in the absolute desolation of eastern Wyoming. There is not anything but a rabbit or two out there. Okay. Anyway, but you know what else there is? A world-class dinosaur bone deposit. This is on a ranch, a Christian family named the Hansons, and they have owned this ranch for over 100 years, and it is dinosaur bones in many places on the ranch, and they know it, but they are Christians. And so they're not Adventists, they're Christians. They did not want the bones to be studied by evolutionists. And so providentially, God connected Southwestern Adventist University with them, and they've got a relationship, a great relationship over the last 25 years or so. And every summer, you can go out there in the month of June. Yes, all of you who, like me, realize the value and the joy of digging up dinosaur bones. Doesn't everybody want to do that? Okay, anyway, so yes, this could be you out there, right, in that picture. Yeah, you could be here digging up dinosaur bones. Let me tell you what they do there, and it is a volunteer thing. This is my assistant Morella's daughter, and she's got a clavicle of a dinosaur. Look at this. This is a rib bone, and this is me back when I had more hair and darker, and I am digging up a hadrosaur, which is a Montosaurus. It's kind of like that. Well, I could show you with a little bit up here, but it's kind of a giraffe-sized dinosaur. It's a rib. I've got a bottle there of what's really close to super glue, and you pour it onto this bone, squeeze it out, and just go right into the bone and makes it really hard and easy to transport. And so before we remove it, though, and wrap it up, in cellophane to take to the, aluminum foil to take to the university to study for a year, because they always come out for June for a year's worth of bones to study. It'll be located by a GPS locator, right? This is connected to a satellite above. It will actually locate, you put it on the bone that you're digging out, locate it within a fraction of an inch. And then they take pictures of it, and with those pictures, to scale, drop it into this program. Now take a look at this. This is looking at the bone bed as though the dirt was taken away. This is high-tech stuff. You can tip this and look at it 3D. You can see the gradations too. So anyway, take a look at this. This is the bone bed there. Most of these bones are from a hadrosaur, which is a big dinosaur, but there's maybe a few bits and pieces of Triceratops, and occasionally the joy of finding something from a T-Rex will be in here too. Now take a look at that. What do you not see? You don't see any skulls. And you don't see skulls because skulls are the first things to break. They are very thin bones. They never preserve practically. And that's why Sue was so fabulous with the full skull. And that means if you ever dig up dinosaur bones and you find a skull, you have just funded your children's college education. Because that's where the money is. Anyway, so take a look at this. You don't see skulls. What else do you not see? Pardon me? You don't see anything connected. There's no knee bone to the hip bone to any other bone. This is disarticulated bones. If you look at the edge of some of these bigger bones, you'll notice that there's some rounding to it. So these have been rolled to get here. Now I'm going to tell you, and incidentally, Dr. Chadwick there on the left, I've asked him, how far of the area have you studied? How much of you have you tried out to see what the bone density was? He says, we've done all this area and it's all this dense. And they've only looked at about 5%. So I said, okay, so what are we looking at? He said, we've done some numbers, somewhere between 10 and 20,000 hadrosaurs. Giraffe-sized dinosaurs. 30 feet tall, some. Or 30 feet long from head to tip. Okay, so what's going to do that? How are we going to get these bones where they are? And I'm going to be a little gross in telling you what happened to get them to where they were buried there. And they're in about a 2-foot-high mudstone kind of deposit. It's very soft stuff to get the bones out. Sedimentary. What happened to get them there? Whatever killed these dinosaurs transported their bodies miles in water, rolled them, and eventually the bodies started coming apart, skulls broke, everything. Moved for miles until they ended up settling, and this is a graded bed, so the heavier bones are below the smaller bones. They rolled into this little depression, and got covered and preserved in this mud. Now you tell me what that sounds like to you. Does it sound like the flood? Sounds like one of the actions of the flood. So anyway, they've published papers on this. And it's been studied and accepted by scientists as saying not so much a worldwide flood, but that water was involved. And so now a lot of the scientists are contacting these southwestern scientists and saying, okay, I've got this and this and this area that we're studying, and help me out because I'm beginning to think that our bones were covered like yours were. And so they're sharing information. It's very interesting. So, okay. Let's do dinosaur to bird evolution. Want to do that quick? You realize that the world thinks that us poor Christians don't understand that, of course, dinosaurs evolved to birds. Of course, everybody knows that. So anyway, okay, what's the theory? What's it based on? They got two theories. One is it came from large ground bipeds, 2 legs. So what looks like a What looks like a bird in this? What looks like it would take too much to make a bird out of that? There's nothing. I mean, these little tiny arms have got to become far and away the largest limbs. You've got to get these smaller. You got to lose this tail. There's almost nothing working here. large legs, small forearms, heavy tails. And so they got a secondary theory called small crocodiles from the trees. Now that is what they call it, not me. Small crocodiles from the trees. So they got small crocodiles climbing up trees. They see food out away from the tree. They jump, get the food, eat it, and make babies. It's all about making babies. So they make babies and they survive. Okay, so next generation or some next later generation somehow has wing flaps now, like those squirrels, those flying squirrels with the wing flaps, somehow can sail out there a little bit and get food further away more successfully than the ones that don't have it and make babies. Okay, then they have wings with feathers. Any questions? So there's lots of problems. Skin folds become wings. Yes, cold-blooded to warm, that's a question. How does that happen? And bumpy scales to feathers. Here, take a look at this. So these are bumpy, those are bumps on the skin, and they have to become a follicle that grows out from underneath the skin. So that, okay, so a little careful pick, take care, maybe I should do this slower so you can see it carefully. So that becomes, yeah, let me do it again so you can see it closely. So you can say, oh yeah. Okay, so that bump becomes a follicle that grows out from underneath and fans out into a beautiful feather. That's what happened. You know, it's interesting. I don't mean to make fun of this, but it really takes so much faith, and I know what faith is. I have faith. So one time I was watching, well, I wasn't watching. I had Nova on my television, and I was around the corner, and it just happened to be on, and I happened to be listening to something they said. They were talking about a plant, and they're saying, and this plant needed thorns, and so it grew them. And this was a science program. So anyway, it needed feathers. Okay, so it grew them. Anyway, dinosaur evolution by types. Here we go. Here, these are 10 types of dinosaurs, 10 families. I'll even put birds in here to show you that it's a dinosaur. So here we got 10. These are the numbers of fossils found of each of these kinds. Here is an imaginary Triassic level ancestor to all dinosaurs. All of them came from this critter over here. Now, so this is going down deeper into the rock. This is going back in time, and we should find ancestors or pre-bird, pre-whatever, pre-T-Rex, pre-something down here, okay? So let's see. And there are fossils in those layers. There's lots of fossils. So it's not like there's no fossils. There's millions of fossils. So when we're digging down there, have we found anybody's ancestor? No, we haven't found, and we still haven't found the imagined ancestor itself. So again, if you think I'm kidding, this is an evolutionist who's an expert on dinosaur evolution. From my reading, whoops, come back here. Okay, there we go. Oh, that wasn't me, that was, okay. From my reading of the fossil record of dinosaurs, no direct ancestors have been discovered for any dinosaur species. Alas, my list of dinosaurian ancestors is an empty one. So, yeah, you think about dinosaurs, that's evolution, right? No, they don't have any evolution of any dinosaurs. They do like everything else in the fossil record. They're not there, and then a little higher up, in this layer of rock, there they are. And that's how it is. Incidentally, you've heard about the Big Bang stuff? You've heard about how the Big Bang Theory is now open for question? Why? Because they were looking back what they thought at the farthest part of the universe where they could see the youngest galaxies. They expected to find things that were on the way to becoming grown-up galaxies, and instead, they found grown-up galaxies. They didn't find any babies. And so it's exactly the same thing in the fossil record. They're expecting to find transitional models. There's nothing changing from one thing to another. They're just there. And so it's kind of interesting that the Big Bang thing is dealing with the same issues that evolution is, dealing with. How big did dinosaurs get? Pretty big, pretty heavy. But you know how small they got? They got the size of chickens. One thing you got to give the Jurassic Park movies nowadays is they do depict some dinosaurs real little. There were some real little dinosaurs. So here's a trivia question to see just how smart you all are. Are you still awake? We're nearing the end. You in there with me? Okay. Here's a trivia question. What's the difference between a dinosaur and a regular lizard? And it's not size. Age. Cold-blooded? They're all cold-blooded. Yeah, there's that. Some are extinct and some aren't. Okay, whatever. What else? Come on now.
There's a lot of discussion on this.
She's listening, okay? That is from our week of prayer. So she was listening when I was talking to dinosaurs. Good job. Good job. So here's the answer to that. The difference between a dinosaur and a regular reptile is the hips. It's in the hips. Lizard hips. There's lizard hips up there. Lizard hips have the legs going out, and then the body is closer to the ground, and it kind of does this to get around. Even not lizards, but like even alligators and crocodiles, and certainly Komodo dragons, they all have this same hip structure. Okay, whereas dinosaurs have hips that put the legs straight down and get the body off the ground. Whether it's 2 legs or 4 legs, that's the difference. And now you know the answer to the very good trivia question. Might help you win a game or something, I don't know. But anyway, there you go, that's the difference. So, okay, we're going to skip that. Let's go quickly to a reference in the Bible that might tell us something about dinosaurs. First one is this. I find this was interesting. You never hear anybody talking about this, but I go, So God created great sea creatures on day 5, all right? And he called them the great sea Tananim. The rest of the Old Testament pretty consistently translates the word Tananim as reptiles of some kind, lizards, reptiles. So anyway, did God create great sea reptiles? Don't know. I'll leave that to you. But here's one that's really intriguing, and that's the behemoth. Oh man, I love Job. I love the last few chapters of Job where God is speaking nonstop. It's the longest section in the Bible where God is talking without interruptions. And what's he talking about? Creation. He's talking about the cool things he's made. He's almost bragging. I'm not kidding. This looks like he's bragging. Look now at the behemoth, he tells Job, which I made along with you. He eats grass like an ox. He's vegan. Okay, that's good news. See now, this strength is in his hips, and his power is in his stomach muscles. He moves his tail like a cedar. His bones are like beams of bronze. He is like his ribs like bars of iron. He is the first of the ways of God. Now that last line right there, I really wondered about. And so I did some study on what scholars think about that. And there's a consistent belief it's not talking about chronology. It's talking about status. He is the first of the animals. He is like the most amazing. He wins the most amazing animal contest. Okay, so like alpha of alpha, I don't know what it is exactly, but it's going to be something amazing. Now, if you have the kind of Bibles that down at the bottom of the page in tiny letters that say, scholars think the behemoth was a, what does it say? Elephant or hippopotamus? Not in that order. Hippopotamus, then elephant. Now, I don't know about hippopotamus for you, but that's an unimpressive animal to me. I mean, I don't go, yeah, wow, hippopotamus. Anyway, take a look at this. It says, he moves his tail like a cedar. The cedar tree is the largest tree in the Middle East. Have you seen a hippopotamus tail? Elephant, same thing. So what conjures up a giant cedar tree in terms of tails? How about something like, and here's a hippopotamus with a human for scale. How about something like this? I'm wondering if that would more qualify for strong middle, eats plants, and has a tail that literally in Hebrew sways like a cedar tree. Certainly more than a hippopotamus. Yes, sweet. Brachiosaurus, you might be right. Looks like a brachiosaurus. I think you're right. I tell you what, the kids know they're dinosaurs. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a class talking with kids, and some kid will start rattling off all these toy ones that I have. And it's just like that, got them all right. And I look at the school teacher, and she goes, there's nerds out there, boy. So anyway, now here's a question I have for you. It's kind of a trick question, actually. What does the word evolution mean? Change. Do we believe any animals changed as creationists? Do we believe that? How about this one? Did this one change? It changed. What happened to the snake? Lost his wings, that's right. You are cursed more than all cattle. Now, if I were to ask you to think like a Hebrew, could you do it for just a little bit? You're Greeks, so you don't understand some things of Hebrew thinking. But especially the subject of curse and blessing. In a Greek thought, to curse somebody is they just cut you off in traffic. A blessing is like, have a nice day. But in Hebrew, it's way more important than that. Blessings tangibly improved something. Cursing tangibly made something less than what it used to be. It's now down here. Used to be here, it's now here. So God has said to the serpent, you are down here, and you are lower, or you've changed more, but all animals, when sin happened, are changed into something less than what they were. We know we're less than what we were. Animals too. So, notice. I want you to take a look at these critters and see what you think. Whoops, that's right. The earth was corrupt. You've seen this already. All flesh, they became violent. Take a look at some of these critters. Ankylosaurus. Ankylosaurus looks like a tank on 4 legs. Man, he's got an armor-plated head. He's got spikes in his back. He's got a club for a tail. That critter doesn't look like he just waddled out of the Garden of Eden. He's living in a combat-oriented world. Now, did the sin of the world, did that change these animals by itself? Or did humans come along to try to breed some warrior animals for the sake of violence? Because remember, human thinking was only violence continually, and probably had bigger brains than us, and maybe looked at some of these dinosaurs and said, what kind of pit bull can I turn these into? What kind of fighter? What kind of warrior? What kind of entertainment animal? What kind of hunter? What can I do with these? I don't think they were pushing science. Let's improve science and push forward the... No, they're only thinking evil continually and violence. Did they maybe tinker around with some of these guys and make them into something different than what they used to be? I don't know. But if you like to think of, well, here, consider it this way. What does the devil do with the best things God has created? Doesn't he mess with them? He brings in, pardon me? He brings in counterfeits. He messes with them, right? Marriage, Sabbath, whatever. He messes with the best things of God. If this line was the most impressive line of animals, might he want to mess with them as well? So, what happened to the dinosaurs? Here's one theory. I don't hear anybody chuckling. And if you have to explain a joke, it didn't work. So, see, they're on the wrong boat. Okay, never mind. Okay, it's not working. Can you even see it very well? One more theory is, what? Oh, you can get a picture. It's pretty funny, I think. But anyway, what happened to the dinosaurs? Lots of theories abound as to what happened to the dinosaurs. If you're going to say, well, they destroyed by meteors, why is it only the dinosaurs? What's there about meteors that likes dinosaurs and no other animals? You know, it's kind of, or practically no other animals. Anyway, meteor strikes. Yep, I'm going to skip the meteorite thing for a minute. Okay, so here's the biggest question, really, that's kind of interesting about dinosaurs. Did they get on the ark? If you go to that Kentucky Ark experience, there are dinosaurs on their ark. So they think they were on it. Here's the thing that's interesting about the subject, and that is all around the world we have dragon stories. Dragon stories, human encounters with big lizards. All right, remember what the word dragon means, big lizard. So all around the world, from China to England to you name it, we have stories about this. If you ask an evolutionist about this, why are there dragon stories all over the world? Well, maybe some people found these big bones. And I said, where do you get lizard out of these big bones? If you lived in Europe and you found big bones and you thought maybe these were giant, scary animals, why wouldn't you think they were giant wolves or something? Or if you lived in Africa, why not giant lions? Or you get what I mean? Why lizards? Lizards are tiny little pain-in-the-neck animals that you know, honey, there's a lizard in the kitchen. Would you come get it? You know, I mean, that's about the biggest impact a lizard would have. So anyway, why is it consistently lizard? A big lizard. And again, I think that those ancient stories, consistent, just like the flood stories, carry a grain of truth with some embellishments over time, but they generally record the last human encounters with big lizards. And those usually end up pretty badly for the lizard. Usually those stories end up with, that's it, no more lizard. And if you take a look at it, there are almost never herds of them or flocks of them. The stories always seem to contain about the last one. And it's a bother to the humans and whatever, and they take them out and that's it. But if you know some of the history, Alexander the Great, Marco Polo, all these other, some of these early explorers that got back to China and India, matter of fact, they just casually say that we saw a dragon, a big lizard. You know, no big deal. It's interesting. So the question would be, if these are human memories of encounters with big lizards, are these post-flood or pre-flood memories? And to me, the evidence is kind of good to suggest post-flood. And if they're post-flood, that means some of them got on the ark. And I know that raises questions, especially in my denomination. And so I would like to talk with you. Now, I've been told by the pastor that I should be careful on overdoing it with Adventist references, because we might have people here who are guests from the community. And I hope we do. And so I hope we have guests from the community. That would be great. So with the questions that I think are especially colored Adventist, why? Oh man, you can't even do that, can you? I'm teasing you all and you all want to hear it. So I'm inclined to talk to people on the side on that subject if you have some questions about it. I think I'll leave it there. But notice this, the wolf and the lamb shall feed together, the lion shall eat straw like the ox. How about that? The nursing child shall play by the what? The cobra's hole? And the weaned child shall put his hand in the viper's den. What does that mean? That means in this future new world where God is going to recreate the Garden of Eden, shall we say, pre-sin world of animals, it looks like the reptile world is also restored to its pre-sin safety. So however you want to define it, at least you get that out of there. So they shall not hurt. So I'm going to end up with this slide. I'm going to play with it a little bit. Remember, this was talked about at the beginning. The great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old called the devil and Satan, who does what? He's a trickster. He's trying to deceive us into believing something that's not true. Now, Revelation 12 is just in front of, good, very good, which is just in front of, excellent, good. Now, Revelation 12 and 13 lead us into 14, leads us into the last day events. Chapter 12 ends with this kind of reference to the devil and that he's deceiving. And we get right into last day events. What is he deceiving the world into thinking? I'm going to take that word dragon And I'm going to take it out and put in a word that means about the same thing. There it is. The great dinosaur. And put a scary head on him, too. Why not? That great dinosaur was cast out, that servant of old. Deceiving. So what is he deceiving the world into thinking? How about this, if we're talking about origins? Among the many things he's trying to deceive, he's got lots of stories he's trying to see, but here's one point I think he's trying to drive home. How would you guys don't believe you were made by a creator, do you? Come on, nature created you. You have no future, no purpose. Come on, grow up, get smart. Learn what the scientists are telling us. You have no future. You're not made in anybody's image. Come on, you're a hairless ape. You are an accident. You are a walking mutant. You're not worth anything, and you have no future, so come on. And what image does he use especially to drive that home? With the one image paints 1,000 words? I'd like to suggest to you that maybe dinosaur, because doesn't the dinosaur elicit this kind of response from people? Oh, dinosaurs, yeah, millions of years. Not the Bible. Am I right? It's a challenge against the Bible for most ways of interpreting. And I just think he uses that image to trick us into thinking we're not the special creation we actually are. I tell kids this, and I hope you can hang in with me a little bit. But I know as Adventists we have tended to not be great moviegoers, and I know that none of you go to see movies. But should you, what? Should you, back in the day, have gone to see this Disney movie? It's called Tangled. Tangled was about Rapunzel. Kids all know this, so when I'm talking to kids about it, they're with me. Okay, so I say, you know how this movie talks about Rapunzel and how as a baby she was stolen from the king and queen. She's a princess. She grows up not knowing who she is. Meanwhile, her dad, the king, has her crown kept on guard 24/7, waiting for the day she is refound and brought home. I tell the kids, that's you and me. That's you. You're a prince and princess. You have been stolen from your heavenly Father, the King, and he can't wait to have you rejoin him, and meanwhile, he's keeping your crowns on reserve, waiting for the day to be able to put them on your head. Yes, that's true. Disney almost never gets it right, but they got it right on that one. So you are princes and princesses, and I'm honored to address such an august group of royalty. So it's very cool. Let's bow our heads for prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for all of this in nature that we've been able to study. We thank you for dinosaurs, the amazing animals that they are and were, and we look forward to maybe seeing them again someday. We thank you, Lord, for evidence that the Bible is true. We know that nature has no ability to organize itself, no ability to grow thorns if they need them on plants, or any other kind of miraculous thing. We know that, Lord, you are above creation, and you made us, and it makes sense. Heavenly Father, you made us to have fellowship with you. We are your kids, and you can't wait for the day that we are rejoined with you, and we are no longer lost in this dark world. May that day come soon, and not just for us, but our friends and family. It's our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. If you have any questions right now, I'll entertain some and just for a couple of minutes. Otherwise, you're free to go or come up here and look at this stuff. But if you have a question, do this. Yes?
Regarding the flood,
Yes.
there's some scientists who are suggesting an ice shield around it.
Yes.
So what have you wanted
Okay.
in conversations?
The pastor's got the microphone, so, yeah, just do it. Yeah. Yes.
What is this? Some scientists suggest that there was an ice shield around the world pre-flood, and that's where a large part of the water has come from on our Earth.
Oh, yeah.
So what have you found in your conversations with other scientists with that?
for 1,000 scientists, there are thousands of opinions of what the atmosphere was like pre-flood. Bible is incredibly quiet about it. Doesn't tell us much. Mentions that there is some kind of firmament that's based on a Hebrew word called raphia, and we don't know exactly what that word means. But the best translation, I think, is in some of the modern translations of the Bible that renders it expanse. There was an expanse above the earth. Instead of something hammered out and solid, like an ice shield or a metal shield or something like that that others have proposed. Those are some of the models. The ice thing is trying to explain where the water came from. I don't think there is it says water's above and water's below. So what does that mean? I don't know. I guess the simple answer is I haven't seen anything that I just think, well, yeah, that's it. It just seems like some things have good possibilities and others have some questions. So I really don't know. I don't know what the best answer is. And I'm sorry I'm appearing ignorant, but that's not hard for me.
It's okay. The other component to that
Yes.
that they talk about is the maintenance or the maintaining of such a perfect atmosphere.
That's a microphone. That's a microphone. Try it again.
So the other part that they are suggesting is that with that ice shield,
Yes.
creating a more perfect environment
Yes.
for heat or
Yes.
temperature control.
Well, let me just say this real quick about a shield. There's no question that whatever happened in the flood, suddenly we are not as protected from something as we were before. Something gets through the atmosphere. I don't know if it's gamma rays. I don't know what exactly it is, but we went from 900 to 90 in a hurry. And it's more than just eating Big Macs. It's more than just eating meat. Something else is going on there. I don't know what it is, but something that had been a protective thing for us is now gone. So that's the best explanation I have for us going down to 90 instead of 900. Thanks. Yeah, over here. Oh, no, not you.
Oh, yes, it's me again.
Oh, no. This
We're going to
guy's-
follow up. We're going to follow up
He's
on
a
his
geologist,
question.
so I mean, we're out of my league here. I didn't
Dinosaurs,
finish.
physiologically speaking, dinosaurs couldn't exist in this atmosphere because they're just too big as a land mammal.
Now, let's be
They're-
real honest. You're saying some people think that.
No.
Okay.
No.
No, oh, boy, somebody who has truth and knows it.
Now. I appreciate the challenge, but physiologically speaking, the rib structure of your dinosaurs, Brontosaurus,
Yes.
couldn't have possibly lived in the atmosphere to which we understand.
Okay.
And furthermore, our exploration, especially the Russians sending their satellite into Venus, which has a liquidish atmosphere followed by a gaseous atmosphere underneath, which is a higher concentration. Do you think that possibly explains the reason that dinosaurs could exist?
Well, I'm starting with your premise of how they couldn't have existed before, and I don't think that's necessarily a believable.
Brontosauruses did not have inhalers. I can promise you that.
Promise me that. Wow. Well, I don't know what to say then. I guess
I do have a second follow-up question
stuck.
to let you off the hook somewhat. In the dig in Wyoming, were the bones scattered in one direction, or were they scattered like they were dropped?
No, they weren't dropped. They were scattered in one direction. They were water moved from a direction.
And what direction was that?
Oh boy, let me think. Was that ever? You know, what's really interesting on that subject is paleocurrents. You familiar with paleocurrents? Paleocurrents by Art Chadwick, who happens to be an expert in paleocurrents. What he has done is he studied wherever bones or whatever sedimentary rock was laid down, fossils, he wanted to know the direction that they were laid down. And wherever he could find that, he started collecting that material from all around the world. And what he found out that supposedly during, let's say, 1,000,000-year stretch, no, 100,000,000-year stretch, 95% of the fossil layers came from one direction. Almost like the whole wave of the flood was moving for a certain period of time. Everything was going this way. And then after 100 million years, right, or at least that much of sediment, it came back a different direction. And he's shown this to geologists, paleontologists, and they just shake their head. They don't know what to do with that. That there's consistency and direction over what they would say would be a big part of the fossil record. Can't answer you because you're too smart for me. I'm sorry. I'm not kidding either.
We took the mic away from him. Any other questions? Yeah?
Snakes get drowned by the flood?
Did what get drowned?
Did snakes get drowned by the flood?
Well, there's some snakes that got on the ark, so that's why we have snakes before. But the ones that weren't on the ark, yeah, drowned like all the other animals that didn't get on the ark. Now, my question would be, is she happy with that? Or did she wish is she a snake fan? She loves snakes. One of the bravest days in my entire youthful life was the day I braved holding a snake. And I've not done it since. There's something about snakes. I'm sorry, but anyway.
Colleen?
What about the sea mammals?
About the sea mammals?
Whales and all that?
Whales, yeah, whales survived.
Did
Everything
they just
survived.
go along with the water, or did they get put into the ark somehow?
95% of the fossils that we have are marine fossils. So seashells, sea animals, and everything did not do well in the flood. And why is that? I don't know if you've ever had fish as a pet in an aquarium. You have. Temperature is very, very important for fish, to maintain fish. And we think that volcanoes were very active during the flood when the crust of the earth broke up. And we lost billions of fish at that time. Now, what happened to whales? Whales, I assume, would have been in deeper water and safer. So, but there's a whole lot of shoreline animals that we lost. Hey, look at this guy knows what to do.
I just wanted to comment because years ago, I talked to a professor at a local community college down in California, and as a new Christian, he challenged me, well, what happened to the whales? And at that moment, I didn't have an answer. I went home and I read my Bible, which is a good thing to do, and I read right there that all the air-breathing, land-dwelling creatures were on the ark.
Yes.
He challenged me with where did Noah put the whales? Well, Noah didn't have to put the whales on the ark, according to God.
No.
So they survived the flood.
You know what a whale is in terms of evolution? It's, okay, we all came from the ocean, right? Everything evolved originally from there, and so some things started to spring this is a good trick, going from breathing water to breathing air. But anyway, came out on the land, had legs and all that, walked around for a while, evolved into mammals, and then mammals wanted to go back in the ocean. And so eventually they started to swim after fish and things, and eventually became whales and sea lions and all of this kind of stuff. And so the whales had noses down here, but eventually they went up here. They kind of, I don't know what they look like midstream. But anyway, to where they could breathe that way, and it's more efficient. So yeah, that's what a whale is.
So just
You should come back with that on that guy, the professor, saying, so you really believe that it was once a wolf-like animal that was on the land, that it evolved from the water first, then to land, and then land back to water. Yeah.
The depictions I've always ever seen is a black and white spotted cat standing near the shore, and then they become what they depict as.
Well, yeah, but that's not even a predator. But anyway, okay. Okay, that's interesting. Yes, sir.
So just for food for thought, there's a lot of animals, even on their earth today, that never stop growing throughout their life.
Never saw what?
They never stop growing
Yes,
throughout
reptiles
their life.
don't stop growing.
Reptiles included.
Yeah.
Now, we looked at T-Rex and his funny shape. And
I don't know what to do with T-Rex.
And
I don't know what to
kangaroo
do.
is one of those animals that never stops growing. So if you had an 800-year-old kangaroo,
Yeah.
because Noah was, 950 years old, so if you had an 800-year-old kangaroo that his bones got jumbled up with a whole bunch of other what would he look like? He's got long legs like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. He's got short little front legs. He's got everything except the same head. And you said you never find heads. So could it be that what we call a T-Rex was actually an 800-year-old kangaroo?
You know, I've been to a lot of churches with a lot of questions. I haven't heard that one.
Well, there's other animals. What would an 800-year-old alligator look like?
Yeah, alligators keep getting big. Crocs keep getting big.
They
Yeah,
never
I don't
stop
know.
growing.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
What would a bat that's 800 years old look like?
What would a man look like? I'd like to see an 800-year-old man. I think we slowed down. You know, it's not like when they were 200, they looked like us at 90 or something. I think they look quite a bit younger. So whatever the aging process, it sped up after the flood. I'm not excited about that. Do you? Are you? I don't. Yeah. There's an old guy in my mirror wearing my clothes. I don't know what happened there.
Well, we know there were giants too, right? Goliath was definitely bigger than David.
Okay, I think did I see a hand over here? Yeah, right over here. Thank you. Okay, I don't want to keep you longer because I know that sugar is hitting you. So.
If you're on a hike.
Yeah.
Into an area that people don't hike usually.
Yes.
Maybe you're out hunting.
Yep.
You go across an amphitheater that's shale and a big amphitheater, and you come across a bone sticking out. Mm-hmm. What's the proper protocol? And it's no little bone, it's a big one.
Ooh, if it's a big bone, oh my. First of all, 100% of it depends upon who owns the land you find it on. If it's privately owned land, you talk to the landowner, tell him what you got. Sioux is found on an Indian reservation in a property owned by a Native American who had a contract with the dinosaur diggers who knew there was bones there and wanted to dig them up and said, got permission to do it. But when they found out it was a T-Rex and complete like that, it was fought in court. And the owner of the property won, not the discoverers. So it's really, it depends upon where you are and who owns the property and how big a bone and good a bone it is. Because if it's something that's no big deal, they probably let you take it. Now, if you're talking about BLM, like Bureau of Land Management, I don't think you could potentially get it if you had permission. If it's a national park, forget it. National forest, forget it. That's you're looking at my bone because I'm a taxpayer, so you can't. Yeah. Anyway, and same thing with that nice lava I've got there. I'm not supposed to own that. I didn't ask for permission. I've thought, boy, if I wrote a letter to them and said I'm using it for educational purposes. Anyway, yeah. Yeah, no, the egg is broken.
The question is, did he ever x-ray that egg?
I have not, but the thing is, where did it go? Over here. It's broken at the base, and so it's not a whole egg. See that right there? So there's about 20% of it gone, so I'm pretty sure. And also the percentages, like I say. If you have one, it's 1 in 10,000 easily. Now, I have a theory about that. Why are almost none of the eggs fertilized? I'm thinking the dinosaurs saw that water coming. Okay, never mind. I think they saw the water coming and they weren't thinking about a nursery at the time. Anyway, so do I have? I'm sorry.
No,
excuse
you're good.
me. Excuse me.
If you've appreciated Dr. Hudson today, Thank you so much for coming and sharing with us, bringing all this stuff with you.
Yeah.
And I understand you have way more at the Creation Center.
Yes.
I think it's worth going by there
Absolutely.
and take a look at it, right?
You can get a tour. Call ahead.
Yeah. That's
It's in Ridgefield, which is Vancouver, Washington.
Vancouver, Washington, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much for coming and joining us.
Okay.
We really appreciate it. I can't imagine that you're not tired. You know, this has been a long day for you. I know, exactly. And Aaron, by the way, you need to come up here because look, they're here. So I don't know where he went, but they're here.
Okay. Yeah.
So anyway.
And if you guys have any other questions and you want to talk with me, come on up. That's okay. But let's let people go home and digest that sugar.
Thank you so much. How about having a word of prayer? Could you all stand with me?
Yeah.
Holy Father, thank you so much for just the information and the knowledge that you've shared with us through Dr. Hudson. Thank you for the interest that you've given him so that he would not only be able to know these things, but also this love of sharing it, Lord. We pray, Father, that you bless him, bless Cindy and his family, Lord, as they continue this ministry. And Lord, I pray, Lord, that some of the things that we've learned, maybe they'll pop in our heads as we talk to others, specifically unbelievers, Lord. I pray that you would just help us to remember some of these things and just maybe just tickle their minds a little bit, you know. Thank you, Father. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Come on up and ask questions. Otherwise, we'll see you guys next week.